Chapter 1137. Imperial Calendar, Year 7743, November 26th, Bang! In the conference hall of Shiping Prefecture, the sturdy pearwood door was instantly pulverized. A group of counselors and strategists who were busy at work jumped in fright and retreated one after another. Amidst the dust, they saw Fillet leading a group of generals in with a dark expression. "Where is Qinyu?" Fillet's fists were lowered. Demonic flames swirled around him, and a faint domain enveloped the area. It was so oppressive that everyone almost couldn't breathe. At one end of the conference hall table, Qinyu slowly raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot from staying up all night. He asked with a puzzled expression, "Deputy Marshal Fillet, what are you doing?" Fillet sneered, "What am I doing? You sent people to capture 3 of my wives, and you're asking me what I'm doing? Is that so? What do you think?" Fillet slapped an arrest warrant on the table and said, "Isn't this the official document issued by your advisory group? Well done, Qinyu. You've actually carried out your military duties in front of me." "Wait a minute." Qinyu frowned and said, "I think there must be some misunderstanding. Lord Fillet is the deputy marshal and has a special status. I will definitely not use military law to punish you. There must be some misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? If that was a misunderstanding, then what is this? Fillet waved his hand, and immediately 2 guards brought in a bloodied man who was beaten up and said, "The marshal should know this man. He is a messenger from your residence. As for the things he sent, the marshal should know even more." Fillet gently opened his palm, and instantly, a piece of paper appeared in front of Qinyu. It was written in his handwriting, and the content of the paper was to report to Xianxia that Fillet had interfered with military affairs. He requested for Fillet to be stripped of all his duties and only be given the status of an ordinary soldier. He wanted him to start from the point of merit and use this method to establish military might. "This is impossible. This is impossible." Qinyu's face turned pale. He shook his head and murmured, "I've never written such a thing. I've never written it. Could it be that the marshal can't even recognize his own handwriting?" Fillet sneered, "If you don't even dare to admit what you've done, how can you still have the face to be the marshal of our great kingdom of Shang?" "I said I didn't write it, so I didn't write it." Qinyu gritted his teeth. "Fillet, there must be someone trying to drive a wedge between us. It must be like this. You must not believe this kind of false testimony. Give me some time, and I will prove that this is all a setup. Is that so?" Fillet's palm that was pressing on the evidence suddenly exerted force. Immediately, a purple demonic flame flew up and instantly shattered the long table in the hall, destroying it along with the evidence. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly as he smiled. "I don't need any proof for setup. Qinyu, remember this, no one can sow discord between us. If I want to destroy you, then I will destroy you. It won't be because of anyone else, but because I want to destroy you. All right, I won't pursue this matter with you. Just don't do it again. Next time, it won't be so easy to deal with. Just be a good marshal and be careful." With that, Fillet left with a group of generals. Qinyu stood blankly on the spot, looking at the map that was shattered on the ground. He was so aggrieved that his whole body began to tremble. "Marshals," one of the staff officers said cautiously, "please don't lower yourself to the level of this boorish man. He can't see what you see. There is only power and power in his heart. Please don't lower yourself to his level." Tears welled up in Qinyu's eyes as he clenched his fists and said, "If it wasn't for the sake of the people of the Tianju Empire not being trampled on, why would I have to fight this battle? If it wasn't for the glory of my ancestors, why would I have to suffer such grievances? Immediately send someone to investigate the cause of this matter. Find out who kidnapped Felix's wife and concubines. Also, find a way to find out who wrote that secret memorial and who sent it out. The seal on it is mine, so who stamped it? I'm afraid there's a ghost in our staff group. I don't care who it is, find out for me." On the 28th of November, the news had already reached Changyuan Island. In the afternoon, all the generals gathered in the marshal's tent. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin prepared afternoon black tea for the generals. No one knew where the black tea came from, but the generals were so grateful that they almost burst into tears. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi were noble, but they served tea like maids. Once the war broke out, they would be fierce generals. This was not something that ordinary people could compare with. Everyone was envious of Lin Muyu. She had 2 good wives and everyone was envious. Of course, no one else could share Lin Muyu's pain. Damn it, he blew a few bubbles on the black tea and frowned. He's not completely furious after being humiliated like this. This fillet's endurance is really good. If it were me, I'm afraid I would have exploded. Feng Jixing said calmly, I'm afraid you didn't use enough medicine to make fillet shed all pretense of cordiality with Chen Yu. Why not? There are some things that you don't understand, you. Feng Jixing touched his nose and said, for women, Her Highness Yin and Princess Xi are everything to you. They're worth risking your life to protect, but it's different for Fillet. Although Fillet likes those 3 concubines very much, they're just like clothes. Once they're gone, they can be replaced or found again. Anyway, Fillet doesn't really love them. So, your provocation didn't completely hit Fillet's weak point. However, it has already made the relationship between Fillet and Qin Yu worse. All the generals smiled. Only Feng Jixing had the guts to expose the relationship between Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, and Tang Xiaoxi. No one else dared to say it out loud. Lin Muyu nodded. Maybe you're right. Does Brother Feng have a bigger and stronger medicine? Yes. Feng Jixing stretched out his arm lazily, almost hitting Wei Chao's face. He waved his hands in apology and said with a smile, stirring up trouble happens to be my forte. According to the information sent by the brothers of the Imperial Guards, Fillet's most treasured people aren't women, but his group of subordinates. There's about 100 of them, and they're called the Charge Camp. These people followed Fillet from the Heaven Realm to the Mortal Realm. They're loyal and devoted to Fillet, and they're as close as brothers. If we use the Charge Camp to sow discord between Fillet and Qin Yu, I'm afraid it'll be enough. How to make use of them is the key. Do you have any ideas? Lin Muyu said in a low voice. Feng Jixing smiled with confidence and said, Fillet has never restricted the Charge Camp, so when the 100 people of the Charge Camp arrived at Shiping Prefecture, they immediately looted some mansions and collected gold, silver, jewelry, and beautiful women from all over the place. The Charge Camp also likes the women from good families. As far as I know, Shiping Prefecture consumes a lot of resources every day, and a large amount of resources are transported from the former Celestial Empire's Lao Han City. 3 days later, a batch of weavers from Lao Han City will arrive at Shiping Prefecture. There are about 2,000 of them, and they're all young women who know how to work. They're responsible for preparing clothing and flags for war. Why don't we start with these women and encourage the soldiers of the Charge Camp to snatch these women as concubines? Although Qin Yu is the marshal of the Great Shang Dynasty, he's still the former king of Lao Han City. The Celestial Empire is Qin Yu's flesh and blood, and also his reverse scale. Once the Charge Camp touches these weavers, Qin Yu will definitely punish the people of the Charge Camp in a rage. Fillet won't let the matter rest. It'll be strange if the 2 sides don't fight. After hearing this, Lin Muyu took a deep breath and praised sincerely, in terms of stirring up trouble, I'm really far behind Brother Feng. In comparison, I'm really simple-minded. Feng Jixing smiled and said, I only thought of this idea occasionally. Do you think I'm a scheming person? Actually, I'm also very simple-minded. Xianxia held the black tea in his hands and said coldly, you two are too modest. Tang Zhen also held back his laughter and said, after listening to Lin General and General Feng's words, Tang Zhen feels that this world is not simple. Everything is not what it seems on the surface. This subordinate admires you very much? Only Ling Huyen frowned and said, but the price of this sowing discord is the thousands of weaver maids. They are poor people to begin with. This is too unfair to them. Lin General, do we really have to do this? Lin Muyu gently held her teacup with both hands and said, if the innocence of these 2,000 weaver maids can be exchanged for an unprecedented victory, then this business is very worth it. For now, there is no better way. If we don't do this, then the price may be the lives of hundreds of thousands of great Qin soldiers. As the marshal, I must protect my subordinates. Otherwise, what right do I have to sit in this position as a goody two-shoes? Ling Huyen smiled slightly and said, perhaps Lin General is right. There must be trade-offs. There has always been trade-offs. Lin Muyu looked meaningfully at Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi in the distance and said, as we live in this world, we are always faced with one choice after another. As long as there is a choice, there will be a sacrifice. There are no absolute good and bad people in this world. All I can do is follow my heart and do what I think is right. Feng Jixing stood up and tucked the golden helmet under his armpit. He said with a smile, don't be such a busybody. Those who achieve great things should not be bothered by trifles. If we have decided to do this, then I will immediately start planning. I'm afraid it will be too late. Once those weaver maids enter the city, everything will be over. Lin Muyu nodded, go ahead and do it. Yes, Lin General. Wait a moment. Lin Muyu suddenly said. What is it, Lin General? Feng Jixing turned and asked. Lin Muyu thought for a moment and said, if possible, tell the news to Qin Yu before the charge camp has the chance to defile those weaver maids. Ask Qin Yu to do a good deed for us. Yes, your subordinate understands. Feng Jixing turned and left. Ling Huyen pursed her red lips and looked at Tang Jin beside her. She said softly, husband, do you also think we should do this? Tang Jin was slightly startled and remained silent. What is it? Nothing. Tang Jin smiled and said softly in a low voice, perhaps General Feng is right. Those who achieve great things should not be bothered by trifles. Being overcautious will eventually lead to a disaster and implicate the entire empire. Lin General and General Feng are both swift and decisive people. It is a great misfortune for those 2,000 weaver maids to meet such opponents. However, for the people of the Qin Empire, it is a great fortune to have such a military commander. Without such outstanding people, I'm afraid this world will have to fight for many more years and many more people will die. Ling Huyen nodded and no longer had any objections. She only looked at Tang Jin's mottled sideburns and felt an indescribable pain and discomfort. Chapter 1138. 2 days later, Shiping City. Even though a great battle was about to arrive, this bustling city was still filled with the atmosphere of singing and dancing to celebrate peace. At night, lanterns were lit up on the main street, causing the entire street to seem like fireworks. Various restaurants were open for business, and in the most famous restaurant, a group of tall and sturdy men were drinking without end. The charging camp was Filet's most valiant army. The group of people were already drunk, and their arms were bare as they talked loudly. The concubines I bought yesterday are really strong, very spicy. Sigh, the concubines I bought are all from brothels. Damn, so boring. The entire Shiping prefecture is under the control of Marshal Qin Yu, who would dare to rob them. I heard that even Lord Filet's 3 concubines were released because of the marshal's orders. Shoo, lower your voice. At this moment, a shifty-eyed waiter came upstairs, holding a jug of wine in his hand. He said, my lords, the drunken immortal has just been warmed up. Come have a taste. Alright, bring it over and let us have a look. If the wine isn't good, I'll smash your shop. I'll make sure you all are satisfied. A few of the charging camp's soldiers took a sip of the drunken immortal and immediately clicked their tongues. Good, it really is good wine. That's right. The waiter said complacently, this drunken immortal is a peerless product from the heavenly Zhu Empire's scorching Han City. It's brewed with the water of snowy mountains and rare fruits. It's just like the beauties of our scorching Han City. Oh, you're from scorching Han City? Are the beauties of scorching Han City really as good as the rumors say? Of course. The waiter was about to leave when a burly man grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back. The burly man was already drunk. He laughed and said, Kid, tell me, where can I get the beauties of scorching Han City? You can't buy them, can you? The waiter panicked. Sir, please let go of me first. The burly man loosened his grip. Tell me, if you don't give me a good explanation today, I'll strangle you to death. The waiter nodded repeatedly. I'll tell you. If you want to get your hands on the beauties of Scorching Frost City, you either have to go to Scorching Frost City or there's another way. What is it? 2 days later, a group of weaver maids from Scorching Cold City will enter Shiping Prefecture. They pass through the Forest of No Return and will be protected by about a battalion of soldiers. These weaver maids are all good people. Gentlemen, this is all I know. Are you sure it's 2 days later? Yes, the store has an appointment letter for the accompanying officers. Humph. Let's go. This is none of your business. The waiter scrambled down the stairs, but there was a faint smile on his face. He thought to himself, my acting skills are really top-notch. 2 days later, at noon, there was chaos in the forest outside the city. Someone dared to charge into the camp and attack the army from Scorching Cold City, kidnapping nearly 1,000 women. The news spread like wildfire, and in less than 2 hours, it had already reached Shiping Prefecture. They're rebelling. They're rebelling. Chen Yu slammed his palm on the table and said, how dare they kidnap women in broad daylight? Are there any military laws? Are there any laws? I will not tolerate this group of black sheep who have violated military discipline any longer. Men, order the military police battalion to move out. Arrest all those involved in the robbery and murder of Scorching Cold City soldiers. There will be no mercy. Yes, Marshal. A staff officer walked forward and said in a low voice, Marshal, those involved in the robbery seem to be from the Chong camp. Those are Filet's men. Marshal, are you really going to act against Filet's men? Do it. Do it now. Chen Yu said fiercely, as a marshal, if I can't even protect the people of Scorching Cold City, what kind of marshal am I? But this is most likely Lin Muyu's evil plan. Marshal, please look at the bigger picture and not be angered by Lin Muyu. Oomph. Chen Yu gritted his teeth. Even if it's Lin Muyu's plan to sow discord, can Lin Muyu order the Chong camp to kill the soldiers of Scorching Cold City? It's Filet, that bastard, who's condoning his men. Arrest them, find out who killed them, and behead them without mercy. I'll give up my position as marshal. If we lose this battle, we lose. It's none of my business. Forget it, I'll go arrest them myself. Yes, Marshal. For the entire afternoon, Chen Yu led the military police battalion to arrest people. Those who confessed were killed on the spot. In one afternoon, they killed nearly 40 soldiers of the Chong camp. It was only in the evening that Felix and Jean Chong returned from their hunting trip. When they heard about this incident, they flew into a rage. Under Felix's command, 5,000 cavalrymen immediately attacked. In less than the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, they surrounded the entire Shiping Prefecture. They even forced Chen Yu's 500 guards to disarm and surrender. Bang! The second door of the meeting hall was kicked open by Filet. This time, Chen Yu sat calmly on the marshal's throne. He looked coldly at Filet. He knew that Filet would definitely come. You killed my brothers? Filet asked calmly. They disobeyed military law and should be executed. Chen Yu said calmly, Filet, you brought people to surround the marshal's residence. Are you trying to rebel? Don't forget, I'm a marshal conferred by Emperor Shang. If you kill me, you'll be making an enemy out of Emperor Shang. I won't kill you. Filet suppressed his murderous intent and laughed coldly. His laughter made one's hair stand on end. He looked deeply at Chen Yu and said, However, I have found some letters between you and Lin Muyu. I heard that you want to surrender Shiping City and lead 1,000,000 soldiers to Qin. Is this true? That's a fantasy. Why would I surrender to my mortal enemy? Don't tell me you can't even see through such a simple plot to sow discord, Lord Filet. Both sides were in a tit-for-tat situation. Filet remained calm. He smiled and said, I don't want to know whether it's true or not. However, I do know that you have twice the number of soldiers, yet you refuse to fight. You're holed up in this small Shiping city and want to defend. I wonder if this counts as delaying the battle? Delaying the battle? Chen Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Filet, you keep saying that I'm delaying the battle, but do you really understand the art of war? Demonic flames revolved around Felix's body as his aura pressed down, causing Qin Yu's entire body to tremble. Felix lowered his head and stared at Qin Yu as he faintly said, "Marshal, since you don't dare to fight, how about letting this subordinate take your place to command this battle? You'll be delaying the Shang dynasty." "Is that so?" Philae laughed coldly. "Why don't we make a bet?" "What bet?" "I'll lead the attack. Philae, will let you, Qin Yu, know the power of my army. I'll let you know how weak the enemy is. If I, Philae, win this battle, you'll hand over your military power. If I lose, I'll hand over my military power and willingly listen to your commands. What do you think?" "You underestimate Lin Muyu." Qin Yu couldn't help but laugh. Could. I promise you, as long as you can win this battle, I'll hand over my position and let you take it. It's a deal." Felix turned around and led his subordinates out of the marshal's mansion. The staff officers crowded around him and started talking at once. "Marshal, you can't give up your military power. Philae is just a brute. How can he have the right to take up such a heavy responsibility?" "Marshal, don't be rash." Qin Yu sat there in a daze. Suddenly, a bright light shot out from his eyes. He said calmly, "Lin Muyu, you won't lose so easily, right? You must have a trump card, right? Will you lose? Will you really lose?" His voice suddenly trembled. On the 1st of December, it was the 22nd day since Lin Muyu led the 350,000 soldiers to Changyuan Island. More than half of the military rations supplied by Lulu had been consumed, but the battle had not officially started. Everyone was getting anxious. Every day, hundreds of people came to Lin Muyu to take the initiative to attack Shiping Port. In the marshal's tent, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were sipping black tea. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi were reading the tactics of the war god. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A small bee flew over and stopped on the table in front of Lin Muyu. It was impossible to have a bee in this cold winter. This could only mean that it was a scout bee sent by Lulu. "Speak," Lin Muyu said. The bee flapped its wings. Suddenly, a light was projected from its back. Su Jiantao's figure appeared. He bowed respectfully and said, "Lin General, there's the latest military information on the East Coast. The Shang army is gathering. It is said that they have gathered a total of nearly 2,000 warships. Based on this estimation, they will send at least 200,000 soldiers. I have arranged a spy to send a letter. According to the Chong camp, the initiators of this attack are Philae and Jin Chong. Their target is my Green Rock Island. Are they finally going to make a move?" Feng Jixing couldn't help but laugh. "That's great. Immediately order the 3 armies to prepare for battle. Surround them from 3 sides. Let Philae have a life to come but not a life to leave." "No, wait first." Lin Muyu raised her hand to stop him. Feng Jixing and Su Jiantao were startled. "Why? You don't intend to fight?" Lin Muyu's brows furrowed. "No. It is just that if there are only 2,000 warships, this means that it is not the main force. Moreover, it is only Philae's fleet. This means that Qin Yu is still not moving. This is not an attack but more like a probe. Didn't they say that Philae and Qin Yu have completely broken off? What is going on?" Feng Jixing said, "We are unable to find out the specific situation that day. We do not know what is going on. No matter, we cannot fight this battle. We only have one chance to fish. If we want to fish, we have to fish big. Then what should we do?" Su Jiantao was at a loss. "Fight," Lin Muyu said, "but we can only lose, not win. Su Jiantao, you will only send the warships equipped with steam engines to fight. After a while, use the speed of the steam engines to escape. If Philae's fleet pursues us, continue to report to me. If he doesn't, then wait for a bigger fish." "Yes, Lin General." Su Jiantao was also a famous general. His mind was sharp and he quickly saw through Lin Muyu's intentions. He smiled and said, "Philae's army has always been arrogant. This subordinate will use my defeat to add fuel to the fire." Chapter 1139. On the morning of the 2nd day, snowflakes started to fall from the sky. The dense snowflakes seemed to have covered the sea with a thin layer of fog. As a result, The situation several hundred meters away could no longer be seen clearly. The gurgling water constantly lapped against the sides of the warships. The dragon-shaped flag of the Longdan army camp fluttered in the wind. 500 ships appeared in the sea in a square formation. From afar, the rumbling sound of war drums could be heard. Philae's fleet had arrived. "Lord, quickly look." The deputy general pointed into the distance. Su Jiantao squinted his eyes. His gaze pierced through the curtain of snow. About 600 to 700 meters away, he could vaguely see the traces of the Celestial Pole's land warships. They were actually so close. The enemy is about to enter the firing range of our magic crystal cannons. Should we attack now? The deputy general asked. No. Su Jiantao shook his head. Let them get closer. The magic crystal cannons of the Shang army are all passed down from the three empires. Most of them are crudely made and their effective firing range is not more than 600 meters. Let them open fire first before we retaliate. Beat the drums and relay the order. The warships on both sides are to move closer to the center and cover the flagship. Don't let the flagship be completely exposed to the enemy's firing range. Yes, Lord. The rumbling sound of the war drums could be heard. The flag bearers on the observation deck of the flagship were also waving their flags to the surroundings. However, the curtain of snow was very thick. The other warships might not be able to see it clearly. They could only coordinate with the sound of the drums. In the fleet of the Shang army, 2,200 warships were spread out on the surface of the sea, stretching for nearly 5 miles. They were approaching the Shang army at high speed, as if they were going to swallow the Shang army whole. Their flagship was a warship wrapped in black iron sheets. There were countless archers on the warship, and it was also equipped with 2 excellent magic crystal cannons. Those were the heavy cannons that the Tianji Empire's army had seized from the Lingdong province. Philae sat on a huge chair with a sharp sword in his hand. He looked into the distance and said, "Observer, report back to me how many warships and soldiers they have." Reporting to Vice Commander, "I can't see clearly. The snow is too heavy. However, the sound of the drums is very dense. There should be quite a number of soldiers. Furthermore, the flag of the enemy is the flag of the Longdan army camp. They should be Lin Muyu's main force if they dare to fight us." Lin Muyu's main force. Philae couldn't help but laugh out loud. Beat the drums, full speed attack. Order the warships on both wings to advance at full speed, outflank their formation, and form an encirclement. Today, I will make Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing die without a burial. Yes. The drums grew louder. The sailors pushed the oars with all their might, and the ship moved forward quickly. At the same time, the huge cannons in the snow curtain pointed forward and spat out fire. For a moment, purple mushroom clouds rose up from the sea in the distance. Some of the heavy cannons even hit their targets directly, causing the warships of the Longdan army camp to collapse instantly and sink rapidly. That's it. Full speed ahead, attack. Jin Chong raised his spear and stood next to Philae. He laughed loudly and said, "This time, we will let that coward Chen Yu know how weak his opponent is." A group of soldiers on the flagship raised their weapons and cheered. For a moment, the morale of the Shang army's fleet soared. Boom, boom, boom. In the distance, the warships of the Longdan army camp finally returned fire. In just one volley, a dozen of the Shang army's warships had been hit by the cannons and caught fire. Some even had their ammunition depots destroyed, and the magic crystal cannons detonated, instantly shattering into pieces and sinking. "Move faster!" Philae roared angrily. Jin Chong narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems like we can't catch up, Vice Commander. These cowardly Qin army warships seem to be retreating? They are only using their tail cannons to bombard us." "Damn it, I don't care that much." "Yes." A captaincy at the side said anxiously, "Vice Commander, many of our warships have been hit by the cannons and are sinking. Should we stop and rescue those soldiers who have fallen into the water?" "Stop what?" "Let the warships at the back go and rescue them. The first warships, continue forward and chase after the enemy." "Yes." However, the warships of the Longdan army camp kept a distance of nearly 600 meters, causing the accuracy of the heavy cannons of the Shang army to be extremely poor. On the other hand, the heavy cannons of the Longdan army camp seemed to be possessed by ghosts and gods. Under the continuous bombardment, no less than 100 warships of the Shang army had been hit. The magic crystal cannons were extremely powerful. Even the ironclad warships had their armor melted and sank rapidly. "Damn it!" Philae suddenly stood up and drew his sword. He said, "I told you to run. I will make sure you have nowhere to run." "Vice Commander, what are you doing?" Jin Chong was shocked. "You guard the flagship. I will be right back." Felix bellowed, and his whole body was covered in demonic flames. He instantly entered the demonic godlike state and flew along the surface of the sea like a bolt of lightning. His long sword buzzed and trembled, and the biting cold sword chi that was filled with demonic chi instantly bombarded the rear of a battleship of the Valiant Dragon Battalion. Immediately, the deck of the battleship collapsed, and 2 medium-sized magic crystal cannons were instantly torn apart. The entire tail of the battleship also disappeared. "Ah, come." Philae didn't stop and charged forward. The demonic flames spread out on the surface of the sea. He began to use his domain power to control the direction of the ocean current. Instantly, a 3-meter-tall wave cut off the retreat of the Longdan army camp's fleet. The huge wave swept over and pushed the warships towards the Shang army's fleet. At least 100 warships were in danger. "All of you die." Philae's eyes glowed fiercely. His entire being was filled with hostility. "Archers, aim and fire. Magic crystal cannons, aim at that person." The nearby Longdan army camp warships turned their cannons. In the next moment, arrows rained down on Philae's protective aura. What was even worse was that the magic crystal cannons fired more than 10 consecutive shots at Philae's position. For a moment, purple light soared into the sky and exploded a huge whirlpool on the surface of the sea. However, Philae wasn't hit. His flying speed was too fast. The sword in his hand carried an awe-inspiring glow as he pounced towards the flagship of the Longdan army camp. The warship with the bronze tiger standing on its bow. "He's here." The people on the flagship were shocked. Only Su Jiantao remained calm. He said, "Archers, shoot him with the demonic heart arrow immediately after I activate the heavenly book." As he spoke, Su Jiantao suddenly raised the sword in his hand. Immediately, the power of heaven and earth flowed, instantly triggering the power of the heavenly book. With a buzzing sound, raging flames spread out. It was a middle-grade heavenly book of the law of fire. However, what Su Jiantao didn't expect was that Philae's figures suddenly disappeared midway. The next moment, he appeared less than 3 meters away. "Commander, be careful." A figure quickly appeared in front of Su Jiantao. It was Nangong Lai, one of the top experts of the Dragon League. He was also one of the experts who maintained the cultivation of the sanctuary realm. The sharp sword in Nangong Lai's hand surged with the king's combat flame. He slashed at Philae's longsword head-on. "Get lost." Philae's strength was too domineering and vigorous. With a bang, the 2 swords collided. Nangong Lai's longsword was actually knocked out of his hand, and his body flew out like a cannonball. With a bang, bang, bang sound, he crashed into countless wooden boards and cabins, lying in a mess in a sorry state. If Nangong Lai had half of his cultivation in the past, it would be enough to suppress Philae. Unfortunately, the righteous path had declined, and most of Nangong Lai's cultivation had also disappeared. Faced with the dense arrows around him, Philae suddenly swung his sword, instantly killing several nearby archers. He continued to look fiercely at Su Jiantao, who was wearing the commander's battle robe, and said with a hideous smile, "You are Lin Muyu? I want you dead." Sword formation. Su Jiantao shouted in a low voice, and more than a dozen Longdan army camp experts behind him pounced on him. With flashing swords, they went straight for Philae. Although Philae had the absolute advantage in strength, he did not dare to underestimate the sword formation. These sharp swords were tempered with demonic heart stones. Once they were scratched, they would become ordinary people. Then, they would be at the mercy of others. With a fall, Fillet stepped on the deck and directly fell into the warehouse below the deck. A cold light flashed over his head. The power of the sword formation was indeed not to be underestimated. Boom! With wooden debris flying out, Fillet swept his long sword horizontally. Nearly 5 meters of sword chi swept across, and suddenly, the abdomens of 3 Longdan army camp experts were cut by the sword chi, and they fell straight down. This Fillet was completely invincible. "Protect the Lord!" Everyone shouted in unison, and the crossbowmen continued to shoot and kill. Roar! With a sudden roar, a huge creature ran out of the cabin and swept its sharp claws that were filled with Xian energy towards Fillet. It was the Beeman King. When Fillet turned around, he was shocked by the appearance of the huge beast in front of him. He hurriedly raised his long sword to protect himself. Pung! A strong vibration came from the blade of the sword. The Beeman King's attack actually made Fillet retreat several meters, and the devil aura around him gradually weakened. Although the demon god was powerful, there were many experts on this flagship. "What are you?" Fillet laughed sinisterly, and suddenly, a huge purple figure appeared behind him. It was the demon body that belonged to the demon god, and also the source of Fillet's power. He had already planned to use the power of the demon body to kill the Beeman King. At this moment, 2 swoosh swoosh sounds were heard, and 2 figures appeared on the left and right of the Beeman King. It was Ice Palm Wutong and Fire Fist Jingjian. One was ice and one was fire, and the raging flames reverberated and surged, giving off an imposing aura. Su Jiantao's eyes were deep, and he lightly waved his arm. Sword shield formation, assist the battle. In the middle of the warship, a group of fully armored experts rapidly attacked. Their swords were biting cold, and there was a faint luster on their heavy armors. They were all engraved equipment, and this group of people wasn't easy to deal with. Fillet suddenly laughed loudly, and his eyes were filled with contempt. Fighting with numbers? Interesting, Grandpa won't play with you guys anymore. He leaped up, and the shuttle flew through the curtain of snow. No one could stop this Lionheart demon god. "Are you all right, Nangong Lai?" Su Jiantao helped Nangong Lai up from the mess. Nangong Lai's face and body had many abrasions, and his palm was bleeding from the impact. He shook his head weakly. "I won't die." "Commander, quickly command the battle." "Okay." Su Jiantao ordered the military doctor to take care of Nangong Lai, and he went to the deck. He looked around at the blazing flames and the scene of countless warships on fire and said, "Continue to retreat at full speed and don't stop the bombardment." The flag bearer passed down the order, "Tell the soldiers on the burning warships not to resist stubbornly. Everyone board the small boats and retreat, and leave the big ships to the Shang army." Chapter 1140. After close to 2 hours of bombardment and pursuit, under the gloomy dark clouds, the sea was illuminated by the flames of war. The entire battlefront stretched for close to 10 li. Everywhere were burning and sinking warships, as well as soldiers struggling in the sea. The waves surged, dragging lives into the depths of the sea. No matter how tragic the human battle was, the sea still maintained its grace and ruthlessness. Boom! With a precise artillery strike, another Shang army warship in the distance was blown into 2. The hull of the ship sank rapidly, and the soldiers' cries for help rose one after another. Retreat at full speed. Su Jiantao's arm was injured by the bombardment. Holding on to the injured part, he gazed into the distance and said, "We can't let the enemy fleet chase after us like this. Otherwise, we will be devoured. Retreat at full speed. Order the steam-powered warships to increase their speed to the maximum." Amidst the rumbling sounds, the propellers at the bottom of the ship rotated rapidly, bringing the warships away from the Shang army's bombardment area. It was close to noon. Su Jiantao looked around. The remaining Imperial warships were retreating quickly. Many of them were damaged, and some were even on fire. Fortunately, most of the soldiers who fell into the water had escaped on small boats. They wouldn't leave any captives for the enemy. What was left behind were only heavily damaged warships and warriors who had died in battle. They are increasing their speed. On the Shang army's flagship, the deputy general had a look of astonishment. What the hell are those Qin army warships? How can they maintain such a high speed even when the wind is against them? They seem to be some machines. Jin Chong said. Filet's eyes were cold. It doesn't matter. These wretched trash won't live for long. Continue to chase after them until all of them are sunk. Yes. Filet deployed close to 1,000 warships to chase after Su Jiantao's troops. Although they were getting further and further away, it seemed that Filet had already decided to chase after them to Greenstone Island. In the afternoon, the snow was getting heavier and heavier. Filet's warship had also sailed into a region of the sea that he had never entered before. In the distance, a towering rocky island appeared. The island was very small, about the size of a ship. Be careful. An experienced human captaincy said, there might be submerged reefs in this area. Our battleship is carrying a lot of people, so it'll be troublesome if we hit the reefs. Jin Chong said, the Qin army's warships passed by here. What are you afraid of? If they can pass through, so can we. Don't be afraid, continue to chase after them. Yes. Just as he finished speaking, a warship about 100 meters away suddenly stopped with a bang, and then began to sink slowly. The soldiers on the ship screamed in fear. Sure enough, they had hit the rocks. Soon, the second, third, and fourth battleships appeared. The entire fleet fell into chaos. There were many reefs in the water, and no one knew how many there were. Your Excellency Filet, we can't continue to pursue them. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll all be buried here. This is the sinister plot of the Qin army. They deliberately led us here. Why didn't they hit the reef? Maybe they left some kind of mark, a bunch of good-for-nothings. Why didn't they survey the terrain of the sea in advance? Captaincy was speechless. Retreat. Filet looked angry. Retreat, go back to the port. Take our captured warships and trophies, go back to the port. After nightfall, dragging the heavily injured warships of the Qin Empire back to the port of Shiping, Filet's troops showed off their strength. No matter what the losses were, at least this time the Qin Empire's army fled. Yu Shu sent the news back to Shiping Prefecture. What? Qin Yu, who had just fallen asleep, sat up in shock. The Qin Empire's fleet was defeated. The staff officer outside the door said respectfully, it was a crushing defeat. According to the statistics of the Military Service Office, Filet's troops sank nearly 200 enemy warships, captured 11 warships, 32 magic crystal cannons on the warships, and countless magic crystal shells. In addition, the army collected the corpses and got more than 1,000 corpses of the Qin army. In addition, it is said that most of the corpses have been swept away by the waves. The number of enemies killed in this battle should be more than 70,000. 70,000? 70,000, Qin Yu was stunned. After thinking for a while, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly punched the edge of the bed. He was so sad that he almost cried, "It's over, it's all over. Marshal, are you okay?" The staff officer was shocked. Chen Yu gritted his teeth. Lin Muyu will really be defeated. This despicable guy is so shameless. My God, how can there be such a trick in the world? Why? Marshal, it's over, it's over. The Shang dynasty is really over. Shiping Prefecture can't be defended anymore. Shiping Prefecture can't be defended anymore. Marshal, why do you say so? Chen Yu trembled all over and said, Filet is already on his way back victorious. The first thing he will do when he returns to Shiping Prefecture is to take away my military power. How can we not be defeated by handing over millions of troops to this brute? With Filet's resourcefulness, even 10 Filets can't beat one Lin Muyu. Moreover, there are famous generals like Feng Jixing, Su Jiantao, and Qianfeng. Over. Xishan province is finished. Marshal. The staff officer's eyes shone and he said, since Marshal has concluded that Filet is no match for Lin Muyu, why not preserve his strength? You should know, these soldiers are the heart of the empire. We can't let Filet, this brute, lose them all. How do we preserve them? The staff officer smiled faintly. Among the millions of troops, Close to 200,000 belong to the Heaven's End core of Scorching Han City. Marshal, while the marshal's seal is still in your hands, why don't you issue a military order and order Huang Wanxin, the commander of this corps, to lead them out of Shiping City? Just say that a war has broken out between the Fire Element Province and the Forest of No Return with the demonic spirit race. Send Huang Wanxin to the demonic spirit race. This way, we can preserve the original strength of the Heaven's End core. Moreover, if we are defeated, the responsibility will be on Fillet. It will have nothing to do with you. Good. Chen Yu's eyes lit up. I order you to do this overnight. The army must leave Shiping City before dawn tomorrow. Yes. After a night of hurried marching, the 200,000 troops of the Heaven's End Corps left Shiping City. This also resolved one of Chen Yu's worries. The next morning, Fillet and Jin Chong led the victorious army back to Shiping City. They ordered the commoners to line the streets to welcome them. It was extremely lively. In Shiping Prefecture, when Fillet, Jin Chong, and the others entered the mansion with a smug look on their faces, they saw Chen Yu leading a group of staff officers towards them. He held the marshal's seal in his hand and knelt on one knee. Lord Fillet is mighty. Chen Yu humbly admits defeat and requests to hand over the marshal's seal. From now on, the 800,000 troops of Shiping Prefecture will be under your command. Well said, well said. Fillet was a little carried away. He smiled and said, I did not expect the marshal to willingly give up his position. However, since I am the marshal, you will be my deputy marshal. From now on, we will work together and serve Emperor Shang. Yes. Jin Chong frowned. Wait a minute, Marshal. Why is it 800,000 troops? Shouldn't it be 1,000,000? Oh, the day before yesterday, the garrison of Huiyuan province fought with the demonic spirit race in the Forest of No Return and suffered a crushing defeat. The demonic spirit race led the demonic spirit race to counterattack Huiyuan province. Therefore, I sent Huang Wanyan to lead 200,000 troops to Huiyuan province to resist the demonic spirit race. After all, there is a large amount of military rations stored in Huiyuan City. We cannot lose them. I see. Jin Chong did not think too much about it. Chen Yu continued, Congratulations to the marshal for your victory. I heard that you killed 70,000 of Lin Muyu's troops, but how many troops did you lose? Felix furrowed his brows and said, About 30,000 soldiers and 150 warships were lost. That many? Fillet was a little displeased. How can there be no casualties in a war? Don't forget that we killed 70,000 enemies, and Lin Muyu's troops were originally only half of ours. If every battle is like this, I'm afraid that after 3 to 5 battles, Lin Muyu will have to fight on her own. The marshal is right. Chen Yu bowed his head and congratulated him, but his eyes were full of sorrow. How many 800,000 troops would be left in the hands of a brute like Fillet? No one knew. 2 days later, the news reached Changyuan Island. The marshal's tent was filled with laughter. Feng Jixing laughed so hard that he almost cried. Damn, Su Jiantao only lost less than 2,000 men, was wounded, and sank 39 warships. But Fillet said that 70,000 men died and 200 warships were sunk. What a joke! I've never seen such a shameless person like Fillet, ha, Wei Chou said. Since Fillet has already taken the marshal's seal, it seems that the general attack will be coming soon. Lin Muyu smiled meaningfully and said, Fillet needs to make a contribution. In 3 days he will definitely gather 1,000,000 troops to attack, and he will destroy Su Jiantao's troops on Greenstone Island. The opportunity we have been waiting for 27 days is finally coming. Tang Jin, Xiang Yu, and the others all became solemn. Please give the order, Lin General. We are ready. Yes. Lin Muyu thought for a while and said, We will divide our troops into 5 groups. Su Jiantao will lead the first group to lure the enemy in and bring the enemy's main fleet from Greenstone Island to Changyuan Island. Qianfeng will lead the second group to attack from Jiufeng Island and intercept the enemy's fleet midway. I will lead the third group with 200,000 troops and attack from the front. Feng Jixing will lead the fourth group with 100,000 troops and set off 1 day in advance from the south of Greenstone Island and cut off the enemy's retreat from the southeast. Commander Tang Jin will lead 50,000 troops and set off in 2 days to the sea area 100 miles east of Jiufeng Island and wait for an opportunity. Everyone nodded. Only Tang Jin was a little surprised. Marshal, you asked me to set off in advance. What is my mission? Wait for my order. Once Philae's 800,000 troops leave Shipping Port, you must lead the fleet to bombard Shipping Port in half a day and seize the port. Completely cut off Philae's retreat so that they have nowhere to go. Tang Jin cupped his hands and nodded. He admired Lin Muyu from the bottom of his heart. It turned out that Lin Muyu had already planned everything. Si Kongyao sat on the side with her beautiful eyes full of charm. She silently watched Lin Muyu arrange the troops and felt indescribable joy in her heart. She really couldn't see through Lin Muyu. She couldn't understand what kind of person Lin Muyu was. How could she be so lovable? All girls wanted a hero in their hearts, and Lin Muyu almost completely met all the requirements. No wonder so many girls in Yanlan City regarded this young and promising marshal as the only man in this life. Chapter 1141. On the 5th of December, Marshal Philae of the Great Shang Empire in the Celestial Pole continent ordered the mobilization of all the troops in Xishan province. With a military order, he mobilized 300,000 garrison troops from the former Blackstone Empire's Qianshan city, totaling 1 million troops to Shiping Prefecture. It was a mighty move, as if it could cut off the flow with a flick of the whip. At the same time, Philae mobilized almost all the large and small warships of the Shang Empire, totaling more than 6,500 ships. Even many heavy fishing boats were installed with cannons and arrow towers, transforming them into temporary warships. Hundreds of thousands of civilian workers were recruited to work day and night. The news reached Changyuan Island. The heavy snow was still falling. On the eastern coast of Changyuan Island, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, and the others were patrolling on warhorses. In the distant sea, warships were practicing their battle formations on the water, and battle cries rose and fell. Philae has almost finished preparing everything. He'll definitely come in half a month, Wei Chou said. I've been waiting for him for a long time, Lin Muyu said with a meaningful smile. Feng Jixing patted the snow on his shoulder and said, There's another piece of news. I don't know if it's true or not, but it should be true. Chen Yu secretly ordered his 200,000 Heavens End Corps to leave Shiping Prefecture and go to Huyuan Province. This Chen Yu is really scheming. He should have seen through our plan, so he wants to preserve his strength. 200,000 Heavens End Corps? Lin Muyu frowned. Who's commanding it? Huan Wanxin, an unknown person. The Celestial Empire is full of talented people. We can't underestimate them. Lin Muyu exhaled and asked, Big Brother Feng, is there any news about Chen Yu in our military intelligence? Will he continue to stay in Shiping Prefecture and fight on the sea with Philae, or will he leave? Feng Jixing smiled. Philae left 8,000 old, weak, sick, and disabled soldiers to defend Shiping Prefecture and ordered Chen Yu to stay in person. That's good news. Yeah, without Chen Yu, our chances of winning the naval battle are even greater. Lin Muyu pulled the reins of her warhorse and turned to look at Tang Jin, who was not far behind her. Commander Tang Jin, come here for a moment. Lin General, what can I do for you? Tang Jin left his beloved wife, Ling Huyen, stepped forward, cupped his fists, and said respectfully, Your subordinate is here. Shiping Prefecture will be guarded by Chen Yu and 8,000 soldiers. Chen Yu is not a simple person. Once you take down Shiping Port, do not act rashly. Wait for the main force of the army to arrive before attacking Shiping City. Do you understand? Yes, this subordinate obeys. Ling Huyen also rode over. With a worried look in her eyes, she said, Your Highness Yu, the next time there's a war, please don't let my husband be the vanguard. He's already over 50 years old and he can't stand too many fierce battles and bumps. Please understand, Your Highness. She often couldn't change the way she addressed Lin Muyu as Your Highness Yu. Lin Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Linghu, in fact, Tang Jin's mission is the simplest and safest. With Filet's bravery and strategy, he will definitely stake everything on a decisive battle on the sea. The battle on the sea is the most dangerous. On the contrary, Commander Tang Jin leading a fleet to attack the empty shipping port is the safest. If you don't believe me, you can ask Commander Tang Jin. He is well versed in the art of war and should understand this. Tang Jin smiled slightly. Ling Hu, Lin General is right. Lin General is taking good care of me by giving me this mission. Of course. You are Xiaoxi's uncle and one of the few important ministers of the empire from the era of Qin Jin the Great. I won't let you be cannon fodder. Lin Muyu grinned. Snowflakes swept past and fell on her eyelashes. There was a bit of desolation. She murmured, "Let me be the cannon fodder myself, Lin General." Tang Jin was a little stunned. Feng Jixing smiled faintly. Ling Hu, you don't know. The most dangerous part of this battle is the two baits, Qianfeng and Su Jiantao. The second most dangerous part is the main fleet under Yu's command. After all, Filet has millions of troops. Even if those heads are pumpkins waiting for us to chop, it won't be easy to chop them off. Moreover, they will counterattack and bite us. Ling Hu Yan's shoulders trembled. Your Highness Yu, I misunderstood you. I'm sorry, don't say that. Perhaps it was too cold. Lin Muyu shivered. Go back and rest early. It won't take long for the kingdom of Shang's army to replenish their provisions and ammunition. They will arrive soon. 4 days later, on the 9th of December, the drums of the Shiping Harbor thundered. Hundreds of battleships left the harbor one after another. Because it was a windy day from the northwest, all the battleships lowered their sails and used the manpower of the sailors to step on the oars to move forward. More than 60 large battleships were divided into two groups. One group headed for Jiufeng Island while the other group headed for Greenstone Island. On Changyuan Island, the news came quickly. They divided into two groups. Feng Jixing took a deep breath. He looked at Lin Muyu with cold eyes. Oh no. Why did Filet, that idiot, split into two groups? This has messed up our entire plan. It must be Qin Yu's idea. As the saying goes, don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Qin Yu must have thought so. If it weren't for Qin Yu, Filet wouldn't have thought of splitting his forces. Lin Muyu stood woodenly on the platform and released the messenger bird she had just obtained. She took a deep breath and didn't continue to speak. The war is imminent. Marshal, say something. Xianxia was a little anxious. Filet split his forces. Even so, each group has 500,000 soldiers. It's enough to destroy our forces. We can't underestimate them. Let's split our forces. Qin Yong, the commander of the Iron Blade Army, cupped his fists and said, if they split their forces, we should also split our forces. The Qin Empire has strong ships and powerful cannons. Why should we be afraid? No, we can't split our forces. Feng Jixing raised his hand and said, once we split our forces, our losses will be inestimable. We only have 450,000 soldiers on the sea. If we fight them all, what can we use to attack Xishan province? If we can't land on the land of the celestial pole continent, our expedition will become meaningless. What else can we do? Qin Yong was very anxious. Feng Jixing was helpless. Behind him, Guan Xing, Lin Sun, Luo Yu, and the others were also silent. In the end, everyone's gazes were focused on Lin Muyu. In the end, it still depended on this marshal of the empire to make a decision. Qin Yin wore soft armor and his long robes fluttered in the wind. He looked at Lin Muyu with concern, afraid that everyone would put too much pressure on him and crush his mental state. Lin Muyu muttered to himself for a while and finally raised his head to look at the generals. He said, I have an idea. Once they are about to break away, we will immediately attack. Once they attack, we will immediately escape. We will drag them down like this. Meanwhile, the main fleet will eliminate the other main force of the enemy near Greenstone Island. Once it's eliminated, we will immediately reinforce Qianfeng. There's no need to consider the reserves of the magic crystal cannons. In this battle, we must eliminate the effective forces of the enemy as quickly as possible. Don't take any prisoners in this battle. End the battle quickly. Yes. The eyes of Feng Jixing, Xianxia, and the others lit up. In the most difficult times, Lin Muyu could always think of an appropriate solution. Immediately pass down the order. Beat the drums and prepare for battle. In another half a day, the armies of Su Jiantao and Qianfeng should already be fighting with the enemy. Yes. The situation of the battle was like a raging fire. There was no room for delay. On the East Sea, the densely packed fleet of the Kingdom of Shang came against the wind. 200 li was only half a day for them. Afternoon, over 3,000 warships arrived at Greenstone Island. Su Jiantao led nearly 1,000 warships to meet the enemy. The heavy snow had stopped. There was even a ray of sunlight that pierced through the clouds and shone on the surface of the sea. Sunlight, the sun is out. Su Jiantao raised his head and basked in the sunlight. He smiled and said, "That's great, that's great." The heavy cannons of the Qin Empire had been improved many times by Qin Xiling and the others. Compared to the heavy cannons of the Kingdom of Shang, it had a longer range, higher accuracy, and greater power. All of these were based on a clear vision. If the vision was sufficient, the heavy magic crystal cannons could accurately hit targets within 2,000 meters. The medium magic crystal cannons could also bombard targets within 1,000 meters. Compared to the heavy cannons of the Kingdom of Shang, the advantage was too great. In the distance, the dense mass of warships was speeding over. At this moment, there was no wind. The speed of the human-driven ships was somewhat frightening. "They're here." Nangong Lai seemed a little excited. Ice Palm and Fire Fist stood on either side of Su Jiantao, looking indifferently at the enemy in the distance. Just in time, Su Jiantao raised his bamboo binoculars and squinted his eyes. He said, "The enemy's flagship is 4,500 meters away from us. Wait a little longer. Concentrate our firepower on their flagship and destroy Filet's prestige first." On the mast, the observer reported loudly, "Commander, the enemy's flagship is 3,000 meters away from us. The nearest ship is 1,700 meters away. Continue to observe." Yes. After a while, they could even see the flag of the Great Shang hanging on the enemy's flagship. The enemy's flagship is 1,800 meters away. The nearest ship is 1,050 meters away. Transmit the order. The second echelon of warships has begun. Yes. The flag bearer quickly sent out the signal. Instantly, the warships on both sides of Su Jiantao moved their warships horizontally and got into a horizontal firing position. Tongues of fire spewed out. The firing from 1,000 meters away was aimed at the enemy's flagship. Before the sound disappeared, a series of shockwaves exploded from afar. The power of the magic crystal cannons was extremely powerful, sweeping up the wooden planks of the warships and wreaking havoc in all directions. With just one shot, the Shang army fleet in the distance was thrown into disarray. Su Jiantao looked straight at the enemy's flagship and said, "The enemy's flagship is 1,700 meters away. All the main cannons of the first echelon, aim at it. Fire at a distance of 1,600 and 1,800 meters. Fire every half a minute. Attack in echelon and adjust the distance and angle automatically. Cover all possible positions of the enemy's flagship and execute the straddling tactic. Destroy Filet's flagship for this daddy." "Yes, Commander." Pung pung ping, the sound of the cannons was unceasing. In the distance, mushroom clouds bloomed. The attack of the Qin Empire fleet was truly terrifying. Chapter 1142. Boom boom boom. The shockwaves from the magic crystal cannons shot out hundreds of meters in front and behind them. Flames soared into the sky, and the battleships of the Kingdom of Shang were blasted into smithereens. Many of them sank, and most of them were injured by the shockwaves from the magic crystal cannons. They started to flood, and the Marines were crying for their parents. Jin Chong looked to the front and back with a cold gaze. "Marshal, we are being bombarded from the front and back. What are you afraid of? We are the flagship." Filet sneered. "I don't believe their cannons are that accurate. Continue to advance at full speed. Aim and use our cannons to retaliate." The The counterattack of the Shang army was very powerful. After all, they had the advantage in numbers. However, the effect of the cannons was not obvious. Other than a few advanced magic crystal cannons, most of the heavy cannons had fallen into the water. They were hundreds of meters away from the enemy's fleet. Boom boom boom. 30 seconds later, another 2 volleys of cannons came from the front and back. This time, it was even closer, only 50 meters away. Jin Chang's face turned pale. Marshal, their cannons seem to be trying to adjust the distance. This won't do. We will definitely be hit. Please change direction immediately. What are you afraid of? Continue to attack. Yes. On the flagship, a group of commanders and captaincy-level generals were stunned. The enemy was much more powerful than they had imagined. At this moment, they saw the flag of the enemy. There was a big Su character. It was one of the commanders of the Qin Empire, Su Jiantao. It was not the legendary Lin Muyu. Even a Su Jiantao was so powerful. What would happen if Lin Muyu came personally? Boom boom boom. In the distance, the third round of bombardment came from the Longdan army camp. 4 fiery red magic crystal cannons flew through the air and pounced towards the flagship. Oh no! Jin Chong sensed that something was wrong. He quickly activated his devil body Xianxia. Instantly, the devil flame danced around him. Marshal, we are going to be hit. Philae gritted his teeth and entered his devil god transformation state. Boom! Flames soared into the sky. None of the 4 cannonballs missed. In an instant, Philae's ironclad warship was torn into pieces. The fragments of the warship and the corpses of the soldiers flew into the air. The flames soared hundreds of meters into the air, and waves of air swept out in all directions. In an instant, everyone on the kingdom of Shang's warship was stunned. The 2 armies had only engaged in battle for less than 3 minutes, and their flagship was already sunk. Amidst the flames, 2 people stood on the surface of the sea. They were Philae and Jin Chong. It was easy for the magic crystal cannons to kill, but it was far from enough to kill gods. Even so, the 2 demon gods, Philae and Jin Chong, were still covered in soot. Marshal is fine. Marshal is fine. Everyone cheered and jumped for joy. They laughed heartily and celebrated with each other as if they had just won a great battle. Philae stood on the surface of the sea, with the waves swirling around him, as if he was furious. He growled, "Flatten these bastards of the Qin army. Attack at full speed. Send out the dragon riders and crush them." The war drums thundered, and the Shang army fell into a state of frenzy. Although Philae was fine, the flagship was gone. They could only use other warships to replace the flagship. Moreover, the mortal generals and strategists on the flagship were all gone. 7 commanders and 28 captaincy had sunk into the sea after the 4 cannons. This was a great humiliation, the greatest humiliation in the history of the Shang Empire. Hit. Instant sinking. The enemy's flagship has sunk. The observer was so excited that his voice began to tremble. Philae is not dead. How could a demon god die so easily? Nangong Lai sneered. Su Jiantao nodded. Yeah, I knew he wouldn't die. Pass down the order. Continue to maintain the firing position. Abandon Greenstone Island and retreat to Changyuan Island. Maintain the distance from the enemy. Try to hit them while they can't reach us. Pay attention to the reserve of cannons. At least half of them should be left before we make contact with the main fleet. Yes, Commander. At this moment, a flame exploded on the side. The warship next to Su Jiantao's flagship exploded in the middle. It had been hit by a stray cannon from the enemy. The cannons in the hold of the ship detonated, and the entire ship almost instantly disintegrated from the surface of the sea. No one survived. Buzz buzz buzz. The shockwave from the magic crystal cannons swept over, forcing everyone to raise their arms to cover themselves. The flagship was also pushed dozens of meters away. Layers of waves crashed on the surface of the sea, and the ship completely disappeared. Only fragments and corpses were left on the surface of the sea. Su Jiantao felt a chill from the bottom of his heart, but this was war, and war had always been this cruel. He held onto the railing of the ship and said indifferently, Pass the signal. Everyone, aim at the target within range and fire at will. Maintain a distance of 800 meters. The warship quickly retreated, only using the heavy cannons at the stern to tangle with the enemy. Meanwhile, Philae's fleet refused to give up. Even though the enemy's casualties had reached more than 1.5, they still chased after them with a murderous aura. For Philae, it didn't matter how many people died. What was important was that he had to eliminate the enemy in front of him. Otherwise, when he returned to the celestial pole continent, he would no longer have a place to stand. Even his identity as a demon god wouldn't be able to hide the fact that he had suffered a crushing defeat. At this moment, a dark mass suddenly approached from the distant horizon. "Commander, it's the dragon riders," the observer shouted. "Damn it." Su Jiantao gritted his teeth. "All secondary cannons, stop firing. Adjust the angle and aim at the sky. Fire as soon as the dragon riders arrive. I want to see if the current dragon riders are still invincible." In the sky, the dragon riders were getting closer and closer. Giant dragons roared and pounced. Fire. On the surface of the sea, a flag signal was sent. Instantly, tens of thousands of cannons roared in unison. Countless streaks of fiery light shot into the sky, interweaving into a net of fire. The sounds of clashing and clashing rang out continuously, accompanied by the cries of the dragon riders. In the blink of an eye, dragon riders covered in flames fell from the sky into the sea like giant bats on fire. These were all dragon riders who hadn't comprehended the dragon imperial spiral. However, even more dragon riders swooped down, madly spitting out dragon's breath. They swept through Su Jiantao's fleet. Immediately, miserable cries rang out. Warships were set ablaze one after another. This was the true test. "Don't panic. Put out the fire," Su Jiantao shouted. "Raise your shields and defend against the enemy. Heavy crossbowmen, use the dragon hunting crossbow." The dragon hunting crossbows were pushed out from the sides of the warships. Soon, large nets shot into the sky. Any giant dragon caught in the net would immediately struggle and fall into the sea. Arrows rained down from the ships, continuously hitting the giant dragons' bodies. However, even more of the Empire's soldiers died under the baptism of dragon flames. In the surroundings, the warships began to catch fire. Su Jiantao's shoulders trembled slightly. Hatred surged out from his eyes. At least 100 warships were on fire. After this battle, he didn't know how many of his 50,000 brothers in the Longdan army camp would survive. Evil dragon riders. Fire Fist Zhengjian suddenly leaped up from the flagship and threw a punch from afar. Immediately, the energy of the Fire Fist landed on the abdomen of a giant dragon. The giant dragon let out a cry and fell into the water. Nangong Lai, Wu Tong, the Beeman King, and the others also left the flagship and killed the dragon riders everywhere. Now, they could only rely on these sacred-level experts to resist the dragon riders. Fortunately, the dragon riders weren't willing to stay after burning a large number of warships. They soared into the sky. After all, the dragon hunting crossbows and magic crystal cannons of the Qin army weren't just for show. The dragon riders had already suffered significant losses. The pursuit went on for 30 miles. The number of warships under Su Jiantao's command was decreasing. Nearly a third of them had been lost. He unfolded the map, sweat dripping from his face. As if he was begging for mercy, he murmured, "We've arrived. It's these coordinates. Come out quickly." "My lord, come quickly." The deputy commanders at the side were silent. At this point, victory was no longer a question. Night fell. A faint murderous intent permeated the strait of Changyuan Island. On the second flagship, Jin Chong frowned and said, "Marshal, we've gone deeper and deeper. Now we've lost contact with the second division. Should we retreat? This despicable Su Jiantao just keeps retreating. He has no intention of fighting to the death with us." "Is Lord Jin Chong afraid?" Philae sneered. "Yes, this subordinate is indeed afraid. The Qin people are too cunning. This place makes this subordinate feel that it is a trap that was dug in advance." "A trap at sea?" Looks like Lord Jinchong is scared out of his wits. I didn't then continue the battle. Yes. At this moment, a soldier on the observation deck shouted, Marshal, look to our east. There seems to be traces of the enemy. What? Everyone looked over and saw a bright light in the eastern sea region. It was the light of the signal lights on the warships. Soon, more and more lights appeared, forming a dense patch. Oh no, it really is an ambush. At this moment, no matter how conceited Fillet was, his voice was trembling. Retreat! Spread the sails and retreat at full speed. We can't do that, Marshal. The Northwest will send us into their embrace. Damn it, retreat immediately. But the order was too late. Cannons roared in the darkness, and a dense patch of magic crystal shells fell from the sky. It looked like a beautiful fireworks display. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, countless warships were hit, and light shot into the sky. In the consecutive artillery bombardment, the Kingdom of Shang's fleet had used up all their cannons, but the enemy was still fully loaded. The light illuminated the position of the Shang army's fleet, while the enemy was only floating on the dark sea. Lin Muyu, who was wearing a white cloak of the royal forest, suddenly pulled out the Xianyuan sword, pointed it at the distance, and ordered loudly, "Continue the bombardment, attack when they are close, don't let a single ship escape." The sound of drums soared into the sky, mixing with the sound of cannons. Flames soared into the sky, and the enemy was in the light while they were in the dark. All the soldiers of the Shang army fell into despair and panic. They knew that the Qin people hated the massacre of the celestial pole continent. The hatred between the two continents couldn't be resolved, and this battle would be their last. Chapter 1143. It's Lin Muyu. It's Lin Muyu's flagship. The soldiers on the observation deck were livid. They looked at the fluttering flag of Lin Muyu's flagship and said, "We are being attacked from both sides, Marshal. What are you panicking for?" Fillet, on the other hand, was calm. He lightly punched the bow of the ship and said, "After all, we have twice their number of warships and troops. Don't panic. Split into battle formations and charge left and right. Break out of the encirclement as quickly as possible." "Yes, Marshal." Fillet looked at Lin Muyu's flagship from afar with eyes full of killing intent. This man he had never met before had humiliated him too much. He was determined to fight him to the death. However, Fillet knew that Lin Muyu had many experts around her. Not to mention the 4 grand sorcerers, there were also Feng Zhanlin, Murong Tianxing, Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi, and other experts. Although they were only in the sanctuary realm, they still had their martial arts techniques. Once they joined forces, even a mid-god like him might not be able to escape unscathed. Therefore, he dared not act rashly. Just as the fleet was turning around, a dragon knight suddenly swooped down from the sky and shouted, "Marshal, something bad has happened. There are enemy warships behind us. It's Feng Jixing's fleet. We are surrounded on 3 sides." "What?" Fillet roared. Demonic aura burst out from his body as he flew into the air. He looked at the dense flames and the incessant bombardment in the distance with an ugly expression. He said, "There is always a way out. Our military strength is still above theirs. Pass down my order. All warships are to break out of the encirclement towards the south. Ignore Lin Muyu and Su Jiantao's attacks. Charge south and annihilate Feng Jixing's troops. He doesn't have many soldiers." "Yes, Marshal." Fillet raised his head and said, "Dragon Knight Regiment, attack. Let Feng Jixing have a taste of dragon flame." "Yes, Marshal." Dragon roars could be heard coming from the densely packed warships. The dragons that were hibernating on the deck rose from the ground and charged towards Feng Jixing's battle formation. However, just as the dragons were halfway through their flight, dense flames rose from Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu's battle formation and charged towards the dragon knights in an orderly manner. "What does that?" Jin Chong narrowed his eyes, but his heart was in turmoil. Those were the warriors riding on the fiery red birds. Almost every one of them had a cultivation level of around the Saint Domain, and their strength wasn't inferior to the dragon riders in the slightest. In fact, they even outnumbered them. The cries of the divine bird phoenix continued to ring out in the sky. The dragon riders were being intercepted and killed, but the undying phoenix was even more agile and fast. Streaks of fiery light flashed by, carrying sword chi with them as they slashed at the dragon riders. The dragon battle spiral could withstand the magic crystal cannons, but it could not withstand the attacks of the Xianxia army. Many people died in the blink of an eye. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they raised their dragon spears and dragon swords to resist. In the blink of an eye, the army in the sky tangled together, and there was no clear winner. Charge! Philae stood at the bow of the ship and pointed the long sword in his hand straight forward. He roared, "Charge!" The warships continued to advance, but when they were less than 500 meters away from Feng Jixing's battle formation, there seemed to be a rumbling sound coming from the deep sea. In the blink of an eye, huge whirlpools appeared on the surface of the sea, and the hundreds of warships in front of the Shang army began to spin. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the cold torrents tore the hulls of the ships, and the keels were directly broken. The small whirlpools turned into huge whirlpools, and a huge whirlpool with a radius of 3 miles appeared out of thin air on the surface of the sea. Without a doubt, this was Fuzhu's masterpiece. In the entire Dragon League, only he had the ability to do so. "It's over." Jin Chong looked at the tragic scene in the distance and said, "Marshal, there's something underwater. We can't charge forward like this." "Bastard." Philae's voice was a little hoarse. He raised his arm, and the demonic god's energy spread out along the surface of the sea, dispersing the whirlpool. But it was too late. The sea was filled with corpses and fragments of warships. It was just a whirlpool, and nearly 20,000 Kingdom of Shang's army were turned into nothingness. Dong, dong, dong. From the east, the war drums thundered. It was Lin Muyu's flagship giving the order to attack. Lin Muyu. Philae's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared, "Pass down the order, all warships are to charge towards the east, break through Lin Muyu's battle formation, and return home." Jin Chong nodded and ordered the flag-bearer to pass down the order. But Philae and Jin Chong both knew that resisting at this moment was like a cornered beast. Today, the outcome was already decided. Defeat, a crushing defeat for the Kingdom of Shang's army. One by one, the warships sped forward, facing the flagship led by Lin Muyu, as well as countless magic crystal cannons. The Shang army's warships were blown to pieces, but the remaining warships continued to charge forward, like moths flying into a flame. This was Philae's only chance. Only by relying on numbers could he break through the encirclement of the Qin Empire's fleet. In fact, Philae could escape by himself, but if he didn't bring his army back, he wouldn't have the face to see Emperor Shang. After all, he had boasted before. The two armies were getting closer, and they were less than 100 meters away from the Longdan army camp's warship led by Lin Muyu. Clang. Philae pulled out his sword, and his eyes were full of dancing flames. He shouted, "All the warriors of the Heaven Realm, follow me to kill them. The sea is not enough to stop us, and the pawns of the Eastern Heaven Realm are not enough to destroy us. The glory of the Northern Heaven Realm is not to be desecrated. Kill them and let them know what fear is." On countless warships, the gods from the Northern Heaven Realm pulled out their swords one by one. With a low roar from Philae, everyone jumped off the warship and rushed forward on the waves. Although they couldn't fly, they could at least walk on the water. After all, these people were the best in the Northern Heaven Realm, and they were fierce warriors who had been tempered for thousands of years. Under the illumination of the fire, Lin Muyu's handsome face had a touch of excitement. She slowly pulled out the Xianyuan sword and said, "The real battle has finally begun. Feng Zhanlin, Murong Tianxing, Chang Liang, Dijiang, lead 5,000 Dragon League warriors to attack. Protect the flagship, protect Weiqiu. Don't stop the cannons, don't let any ship pass." Feng Zhanlin raised his saber and laughed loudly. He rushed down the ship with everyone and rushed straight to the densely packed enemy army on the sea. They must stop them from approaching, otherwise the power of these sanctuary experts was enough to destroy the warships. In a naval battle, the warships were the foundation of a foothold, and they must not lose too much. In the blink of an eye, the sea was full of colorful attacks. The battle of the practitioners set off waves on the surface of the sea. Lin Muyu held the Xianyuan sword in her hand and jumped to the sea about 50 meters in front of the flagship. With a gentle swing of the long sword and the fluttering of the cloak, her whole person gave off a feeling of a deep abyss and a high mountain. The awe-inspiring demeanor of a famous general stunned Sidu Sun, Sidu Shui and the others. They were also rare generals of the empire, but they did not have the outstanding aura of Lin Muyu. Buzz, Qin Yin's Dong Hua sword was trembling slightly, and Tang Xiaoxi had also replaced her hand with the Zhu Rong holy fire sword that Lin Muyu had given her. The two girls guarded Wei Chou on both sides. At this moment, Wei Chou was the real protagonist of the battle. The bowstring was drawn. Wei Chou's clear eyes stared into the distance, and he suddenly released an arrow. Immediately, the sun-shooting arrow turned into a beam of light and rushed into the distance. On the sea, a Holy King expert who was fighting with Feng Zhanlin let out a whimper. A huge hole was shot through his chest, and he knelt straight on the sea, sinking in the blink of an eye. Good brat? Feng Zhanlin turned his head to look at Wei Chou in shock. Although this brat was from the mortal realm, with the shooting sun bow in his hand, he was able to shoot a target from 1,000 meters away. His eyesight and arm strength were truly incomparable. In the blink of an eye, Wei Chou shot more than 10 arrows in a row, and almost every arrow killed a Holy Realm expert. This quickly attracted the attention of the Shang army. That lad, Filet evaporated a Dragon League expert with one palm. With a livid face, he said, Jin Chong, come with me. Let's kill that lad who shot the arrow and destroy their flagship warship. Yes, my lord. Not only Jin Chong, but dozens of experts from the Northern Heaven realm also followed him. Everyone's speed was fast and fierce, especially Filet. His iron sword was full of demonic flames, and no one could resist him. Along the way, he attacked and killed nearly 2 digits of Dragon League experts before approaching the flagship. In front of him, there was a person floating on the water. It was Lin Muyu, who wore the 5-star rank of the Imperial Marshal. It's Lin Muyu, Jin Chong shouted. Kill him. Filet laughed and suddenly sped up. Like a ghost, he stepped on the waves and dashed forward in a zigzag trajectory. Suddenly, he launched an attack from the flank. The iron sword was covered in flames. Lin Muyu didn't expect the opponent to be so fast. After all, the disparity in strength was too great. Buzz. The golden gourd wall penetrated his body and blocked with the Xianyuan sword. Bam. A loud thud could be heard. Felix's brazen sword strike had actually caused Lin Muyu to be pushed back nearly 10 meters. Her arms were numb, and she looked to be in a sorry state. You're just so. Felix laughed heartily and suddenly opened his palm. Instantly, the power of his domain swept across the surface of the sea in front of him. The demonic flames turned into sharp arrows that shot towards Lin Muyu. Turn into ashes for this daddy. However, Lin Muyu suddenly disappeared from the surface of the sea. It was not because she was moving fast, but because she had sunk into the sea. The waves under the water surged with faint starlight. Suddenly, a figure flew out from the side, and the Xianyuan sword slashed with the energy of the purple sun. It was the purple sun falling from the star technique. Under the illumination of the sun, Lin Muyu's clear eyes were filled with determination. This gaze actually caused Felix's heart to turn cold, and his speed to slow down. Bam! The shockwave rippled on the surface of the sea. Felix blocked Lin Muyu's attack without moving an inch, while Lin Muyu was sent flying dozens of meters back. She was already panting heavily. Swoosh, 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 the sun-shooting arrow flew past like lightning. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 experts from the Northern Heaven realm had already fallen in front of the flagship like meteors. Only Jin Chong roared angrily with his long spear in hand, and thrusted towards Wei Chou with a vast divine power. However, the two beautiful girls didn't let Jin Chong's attack go. The Dong Hua sword and Zhu Rong's sacred fire sword crossed to block, and the flames and holy light rose. Bam! With the combined strength of Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi, Jin Chong's spear was shaken off. In fact, cracks even appeared on the handle of the spear, and it shattered in the air. How is this possible? Jin Chong was shocked. Under the impact of the awe-inspiring air waves, Wei Chou narrowed his tiger-like eyes and quickly drew his longbow. He aimed at Jin Chong's heart and shot an arrow. Puff, purple demonic blood splashed down from the sky. Jin Chong's eyes widened. It was hard to imagine that he would be shot to death. Before his body landed on the ground, there were roars of demonic creatures around him. Streams of demonic aura dissipated and his demonic body disappeared at this moment. At the same time, his body emitted a golden light that flowed and dispersed like sand. In the blink of an eye, this inferior demon god had returned to ashes and dust to dust. A demon god was nothing more than this. Chapter 1144. Felix could naturally feel Jin Chong's death. Although he had the absolute upper hand in his battle with Lin Muyu, the moment that Brat on the flagship drew his bow, Felix's heart trembled. Before Wei Qiu could draw his bow, he had already stepped on the ripple wave, and with a poochie sound, he broke through the void and retreated a few hundred meters. He didn't dare to continue fighting. Even though he was a mid-god, he was no match for Lin Muyu's meticulous planning. Retreat! Retreat! Fillet loudly ordered, "Pass down my order, everyone retreat. Defend against their attack with an iron bucket formation. The Qin fleet must have a limited supply of cannons. They can't possibly keep up the bombardment. When they run out of cannons, it will be time for us to counterattack." This roar allowed the shaken Shang army soldiers to find a trace of comfort. At the very least, the marshal's flag was still there. "They are defending with an iron bucket formation," Situ Sin said with a frown. "Perhaps Fillet is right. We can't run out of cannons here." Lin Muyu said, "There is still a fierce battle waiting for us at Jiufeng Island. We must conserve our cannons. Pass down my order to stop the bombardment. The Gong Gong Navy will begin their attack. When they are in a mess, approach them, hook their warships, seize them, and kill them." The entire surface of the sea was ablaze. Wreckages of warships were burning. Less than half of the 3,000 warships that Fillet had brought with him were left. More than 1,000 warships were huddled together on the surface of the sea, defending themselves like an enormous tortoise shell. Great Qin's warships slowly approached, getting closer and closer. They were less than 100 meters away. On the Iron Bucket Formation warships, the Shang army soldiers were trembling. Most of them were new recruits. This was their first battle, but they didn't expect that they would be greeted with death. The native cannons and magic crystal cannons on the Shang army's warships had long been exhausted. At this moment, they could only rely on arrows and stone ballistae to bombard the enemy. However, they were completely useless against the sturdy warships. On the contrary, under Sidu Sen's command, some people holding black iron pipes appeared on the warships of the Great Qin Empire. They struck the air and instantly, the Shang soldiers fell like wheat being reaped. That's right, it was the armor-piercing bow that Feng Jixing mentioned. It was also the submachine gun in Lin Muyu's heart. What the hell is that? Fillet frowned as he looked into the distance. A series of bullets were fired at him, but they were all deflected by the god power strong wall in front of him. Keep shooting arrows and use the iron hooks to intercept them. Don't let them get close. Some high-ranking officers ordered loudly. They were familiar with naval warfare, but they weren't the commanders of this battle. Beside Fillet, Captain C, who was wearing a red robe, said in a low voice, "Marshal, we can't keep defending. We need to think of a way to charge out. In this subordinate's opinion, why don't we give the order to raise the sails? The night wind is strong, and we can ram through Feng Jixing's troops in the southeast and force our way out. Once we make contact with the Second Corps, we can make a comeback." Fillet turned to look at him and said, "That's a good idea. What's your name?" "This subordinate is called O." Before he could finish his sentence, a soft tongue suddenly flew out from the side of the sea and wrapped around Captain C's head. It forcefully dragged him into the sea. Instantly, the sea churned, and there were even wild beasts roaring. It was as if a group of vicious sea beasts was having a meal. Blood instantly dyed the surface of the sea red. "What the hell is this?" Fillet watched as his subordinate was killed, but he didn't lend a helping hand. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but he was scared out of his wits. At this moment, Fillet was scared out of his wits. A group of Shang army soldiers shot arrows into the water, but by the time the arrows reached the water, the horseshoe crab people had already disappeared. Instead, thumping sounds came from the bottom of the ship. Everyone's hair stood on end. One of the staff officers said, "What's that sound? It seems like there's something at the bottom of the ship." Fillet frowned and said, "What kind of person is Lin Muyu? How can he use these monsters as an army? This person, is he even human?" No one could answer this question of his. But not far away, a warship was already flooded. The water had entered the cabin, and it would sink in 3 to 5 minutes. The soldiers on the ship were wailing and fighting over the driftwood to save their lives. One after another, more and more warships were sunk. The morale of the army was in chaos, and it had completely collapsed. What's worse was that the warships of the Qin Empire all approached, hooking the sides of the ships and forcing them to approach. The Qin soldiers with broadswords jumped onto the warships and began slaughtering. At the bottom of the sea, the Gong Gong Navy climbed up along the sides of the ships, waving their sharp blades and rushing into the crowd. After a round of slaughter, the defeat of the Shang army was certain. In the air, the dragon knights circled around. One of the dragon knights said with an ashen face, "Marshal, we can't get out of here. Hurry and leave with the dragon knights, as many as you can. Otherwise, we'll all die here, Marshal." "But let's go." Scared out of his wits, Fillet leaped into the clouds and shouted, "All dragon riders, follow me to the second corps, and find reinforcements to save the situation." On the sea, a large group of Shang army soldiers were dumbfounded, and they all knelt down and begged for help. "Marshal, don't leave us, Marshal." However, what greeted them was only death. Before the war, Lin Muyu's order was not to keep any captives. Food and warships were scarce resources, and keeping captives would only consume their own resources, which was not a wise move. But now, the result had been determined, and all that was left was the process of slaughter. Nearly 2 hours later, over a big half of the Shang army's warships had been seized, and the remaining hundreds were powerless to resist. "Pass my order." The Xianyuan sword was stained with blood. Lin Muyu sat tiredly on the corner of the deck of the flagship and said, "Leave Si Kongyao's troops to continue cleaning the battlefield. The rest of the fleet will follow the flagship to the battlefield of Jiufeng Island. Speed is the most important thing in war. Go to the battlefield as soon as possible." "Yes, Marshal." The bugle sounded, and Lin Muyu's flagship was the first to turn around and rush to the northeast, followed by Feng Jixing's fleet. Undercurrents surged under the water, and countless Gong Gong Navy troops moved along with the fleet. In the air, the cries of Phoenix could be heard. Although Xing Tian's army had suffered a great loss, they still had the power. Changyuan Island was less than 40 miles away from Jiufeng Island and could be reached in 2 hours with the wind. "Lord, drink some water." Wei Chou kneeled on one knee and handed over a glass of water, which was faintly stained with blood. Lin Muyu thanked him and drank up the glass. As he said, the glass had a faint scent of blood. After a fierce battle, no pure water could be found anymore. Blood and corpses were everywhere. There were 300 people on the flagship, but by now, only 224 were left. This was war, and death was a common thing. "Lulu, come out." Lin Muyu gave a deep growl. Instantly, a buzzing noise came into his ears. A scout bee landed on his wrist and quickly transformed into Lulu's silhouette. "Brother, I'm here. Check the situation of Qianfeng's battle near Jiufeng Island. I want to see it now." But Lulu's silhouette disappeared and was replaced by the dark scene of artillery bombardment. The 50,000 National Fleet commanded by Qianfeng had been surrounded by the enemy and suffered heavy losses. There were only a few warships left, and the 50,000 people in the National Fleet would most likely be lost. Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel a pain in his heart. Although Qianfeng was a surrendered general, he was still a rare loyal and brave general. "Adjust the angle of the fleet to the south by 15 degrees. Lin Muyu said indifferently. Wei Chou frowned and said, "Lord, we are now moving at full speed." The flagship is fast and has already left a lot of the fleet behind us. Only less than 100 fast ships can keep up with our speed. If we change the angle, I'm afraid we will directly rush into the enemy fleet. Moreover, the best way is to outflank them from 3 sides. We need to slow down and wait for the 2 corps led by General Feng and Xianxia to outflank them from the left and right before we attack. It's too late. I can't let Qianfeng die. Lin Muyu shook her head and said, let's rush into the enemy fleet. We'll disrupt their battle formation first, then let General Feng and Xianxia attack from the left and right. The result will be the same. Yes, this subordinate obeys. Lin Muyu stood up again, looked at the dark sea, and said, where's Candle Dragon? In the water, a silhouette flew over. Candle Dragon cupped his hands and said, yes, Lord. What's your order? Lead the Gong Gong Navy to reinforce Qianfeng's fleet, no matter the cost. Yes. Lin Muyu looked at the sky and said, Sidu Sin, Sidu Shui. Dragon Knight and Dragon Knight answered together. You lead our Dragon Knights. I'll give you the Xingtian Heavenly Army as well, along with 25 giant flying snakes. Reinforce Qianfeng's army as fast as possible. No formation is required. This time, we just want to attack with speed and catch Filet's 2nd Corps unprepared. Yes. Lin Muyu hesitated briefly and said, forget it, I'll go with you. Summoning Icatosaurus, he leaped onto the dragon's back and said, Shao Yin, I'll leave the main fleet to you. Consult General Feng of the Wei Army. Qin Yin's eyes were as clear as water. You have to be careful too. Yes, I'm going. Streaks of light flew across the sky. Added with the surging seawater, the 2 armies headed straight for Eternal Wind Island. Catosaurus's sharp claws slowly spread out in the clouds. Its flying speed was extremely fast, faster than all the Xingtian Heavenly Army and Dragon Knights. It immediately arrived at the main battlefield 10 li south of Eternal Wind Island. The densely packed fleet of the Kingdom of Shang had already surrounded Qianfeng's troops. Qianfeng's close to 1,000 battleships were left with less than half, but they were still firing back with all their might. Dragon Flames. Lin Muyu gave the order. Icatosaurus immediately opened its mouth and spat out a scorching dragon breath. It ignited dozens of battleships on the surface of the sea. The power of the laws disappeared and the gods fell. However, Icatosaurus was a dragon. Its power was not affected at all. All of its dragon power came from its bloodline. Flip. Lin Muyu continued to give the order. Icatosaurus then flipped over and faced the sea with its back. Lin Muyu drew her long sword and activated her profound energy. A sword aura streaked across the sea and cut 7 battleships in half. On the surface of the sea, several figures flew over. They were the sanctuary realm experts of the Kingdom of Shang's army. Meet them. Lin Muyu gave the order, armor transformation. Immediately, Icatosaurus's body began to disintegrate, turning into a majestic dragon armor that attached itself to its owner. A pair of red dragon wings fluttered in the wind. Lin Muyu brandished her sharp sword and swept forward like a whirlwind. The divine sword was sharp. Along the way, blood splattered everywhere. More than 10 sanctuary realm experts were slaughtered by Lin Muyu without any ability to retaliate. Chapter 1145. Lin General, that's Lin General. In the distance, Qianfeng, who was surrounded on the imperial warship, couldn't help but be overjoyed. He raised his sword and shouted, Warriors, Marshal Lin has come to reinforce us. The battle on the main battlefield is over. The main army will be here soon. Hold on, it's time to counterattack. The soldiers who had lost all hope immediately rejoiced. The warships were filled with people knocking bows and arrows and carrying heavy magic crystal cannons. Qianfeng's troops had suffered heavy losses. Many warships were severely damaged, and some were even unable to fire back. Corpses were piled up in the corners of the deck. They couldn't let the dead be eaten by the fishes, so they had to bring the corpses to the land to be buried. This was a sign of respect for the dead. On the surface of the sea, fragments of the warships floated everywhere. Many soldiers were crying for help in the water, but what greeted them were the powerful crossbows and arrows of the Shang Empire. Arrows rained down like rain, dyeing the surface of the sea red in the blink of an eye. Lin Muyu was only one person. How many people could she save? In the sky, the roars of dragons could be heard. The dragon knights had arrived. Over 100 dragon knights led by Situ Sen and Situ Shui descended from the sky. They wantonly breathed dragon flames and instantly dyed the sky red. With the arrival of the Xingtian Heavenly Army, the Shang army fleet on the southwest side fell into chaos. Not long after, ripples surged on the surface of the sea. Numerous Gong Gong Navy soldiers drilled out of the water, wielding long halberds, bows, and swords. Wet sharp arrows danced in the air, shooting the soldiers on the warships into the water. More Gong Gong Navy soldiers began to attack the bottom of the enemy's warships. They were equipped with the same white diamond weapons, which could easily break the iron armor at the bottom of the warships. The Shang army fleet began to panic. In addition to the army of Huam men that kept appearing on the surface of the water, these frightening things were sucking people down from the warships. Moreover, they were very ugly, so ugly that it was a little shocking. This had already cast a deep shadow in the hearts of many Shang army soldiers. Lin Muyu, who was wearing the dragon armor, slashed his way through the water surface and landed on the deck of Qianfeng's flagship. Behind him, the Shang army's warships were sinking. Lin Muyu alone had destroyed nearly 20 warships. At this time, he had also consumed a large amount of dou qi and needed to rest. After all, he was now a mortal, and no longer an omnipotent god. Qianfeng led a group of subordinates and knelt down. "Greetings, Marshal. Dispense with the formalities. Get up and continue fighting." Lin Muyu sat on the side of the ship and looked at the fire in the distance. "Marshal Qianfeng, you need to hold on a little longer. Our main battleships will arrive in about an hour." "Yes, I understand." Qianfeng's face was covered with soot from the magic crystal cannons. He asked with bright eyes, "Marshal, what's the situation on Changyuan Island?" "Annihilated." Lin Muyu smiled faintly. Filet escaped with the dragon riders, but Jin Chong didn't manage to escape. He was shot and killed by Wei Chou. He can even shoot a demon god dead. Duke Wei is really something. Qianfeng and Wei Chou had fought for many years, and he knew Wei Chou's character and ability very well. When he heard that Wei Chou had killed a demon god, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. Lin Muyu said meaningfully, "Marshal Qianfeng, you led a mere 50,000 men here and stalled nearly 500,000 enemy troops. Your contribution far exceeds that of Wei Chou. I thank you on behalf of the Qin Empire." "You're welcome." Qianfeng suddenly turned around and looked at the sky. He frowned and said, "What a familiar aura. It's my army, isn't it?" Lin Muyu smiled and said, "I've ordered the giant flying snake troops to come and help. Let the enemy have a taste of the giant flying snakes before the main fleet of the Empire arrives." "Good, very good." It didn't take long before huge creatures appeared in the sky. They flew in the sky like mountains, their bodies flashing with blue lightning energy. They were the giant flying snakes that they hadn't seen for a long time. There were a total of 25 giant flying snakes moving slowly. Although they couldn't compare to the flying speed of the Xingtian Heavenly Army, they were much faster than the speed of the ships. What is that? The people on the Shang army warships were in chaos. The commander in charge of the fleet, the former general of the Blackstone Empire, Shi Yuqiu, squinted at the sky and said, "Ballistae and crossbowmen, get ready. No matter what comes, shoot them down as soon as they enter the firing range." "Yes, Commander." The crossbowmen all widened their eyes as they looked at the giant flying snake in the distance. At the same time, they could also see the flying creatures circling around the giant flying snake. Those were the winged people, the troops responsible for protecting the giant flying snake from the dragon knights. However, Lin Muyu's meticulous thinking was far too far-fetched. Filet hadn't led the dragon knights here at all. He had long since escaped without a trace. The tragedy of the naval battle at Changyuan Island had completely frightened this demon god out of his wits. Roar, roar, roar. The giant flying snake didn't stop roaring. It opened its mouth and began to suck in everything below it. Instantly, the seawater surged, and water splashed into the snake's mouth and evaporated from its back. For a moment, a huge wave rose up, and the Shang army warships couldn't escape in time. The giant flying snake's force field storm was so powerful that by the time it got close to the warships, the Shang army's ballistae and crossbows had already become decorations. The crossbow bolts had already changed directions in the air, so they couldn't cause any damage. As for the magic crystal cannons, they had long since used up their shells, and the giant flying snake was unstoppable. "It's coming! Be careful!" The faces of the people on the warships were pale, and they were all at a loss. Soon, the warships flew up one by one, and were swept into the giant flying snake's force field along with the waves. Even the people on the warships were torn to pieces. With 25 giant flying snakes wreaking havoc together, it was as if doomsday had arrived. Looking at the scene of the warships falling apart in the distance, Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel glad that she had made the decision to spare the descendants of the demon race. It was as if the heavens had decreed that the gods would become mortals, and after becoming mortals, the giant flying snake became even more like a god on the battlefield, invincible. Even the sanctuary realm experts who tried to attack the giant flying snake were pulled into the force field, and in the blink of an eye, they were crushed into a pile of minced meat. It was a tragic sight. The giant flying snake indeed shouldn't exist in the human world. Lin Muyu said. Qianfeng smiled and said, "The giant flying snake comes from the hive, and the hive's energy source comes from an alternate dimension. That's a world with advanced technology. Just as you said, Lin General, the giant flying snake and the armor demons don't belong to this world. Now that they are part of our army, it's our great fortune, and the enemy's great misfortune." "That's right." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "Pass down the order, let the giant flying snake move to the east, block the retreat of the Shang army, and form a pincer attack with our main fleet coming from the west." "Yes, your subordinate obeys." At the end of the day, the giant flying snake really listened to Qianfeng, not Lin Muyu. Lin Muyu was merely a temporary commander. When Qianfeng was around, the demons would submit to the female Empress Qin Yin. If Qianfeng wasn't around, the demons would definitely rebel. Whether it was the advanced demons, the armor demons, the giant flying snake, the winged people, or the Hui Navy, they all needed Qianfeng to suppress them. These were a group of desperados. From this, it could be seen that Qianfeng was too important to the Qin Empire. And Qianfeng was grateful to Lin Muyu. From being an opponent to a close friend, they appreciated each other, and it was this friendship that created the prosperity of the Qin Empire today. Qianfeng didn't have many magic crystal cannons left, and even the sound of the cannons couldn't be heard. After half a minute, a muffled sound was heard. Although the giant flying snake was wreaking havoc, there were too few of them. The enemy still had more than 2,000 main warships surrounding Qianfeng. They kept approaching and attacked Qianfeng's warships with bows and stone cannons. At this time, it was almost dawn. Bang! The loud sound of cannons from the west meant that the main force of the Qin Empire's fleet had arrived. Then, the sound of cannon fire became continuous. Under the illumination of the white light in the distance, the densely packed imperial fleet appeared on the surface of the sea. The purple light from the explosions of the magic crystal cannons bloomed like flowers of death on the surface of the sea. "The reinforcements are here." All the people under Qianfeng laughed, and the morale of the army was boosted. The feeling of survival from a desperate situation made their hearts feel as if they were about to jump out of their chests. In the air, Lin Muyu's Xian Yuan sword was covered with blood. The dragon armor wings behind him suddenly disappeared, and he fell on the deck powerlessly. He had consumed a lot of energy and was already very weak. "Come on," Qianfeng ordered. "Help the marshal into the cabin to rest and get a bowl of meat soup for him." "No need." Lin Muyu waved his hand and said, "I'll stay here and watch the army win. I won't go anywhere." As he said, he slowly sat on the wet and cold deck under the ship's railing. A soldier of the spiritual fire department came out of the cabin and brought 10,000 bowls of fragrant soup. He said, "This is the potato and deer meat soup that is not much left. Please enjoy, Marshal. Thank you. Lin Muyu took it and drank a mouthful. Immediately, a warm current flowed from his throat to his stomach, and he felt much better. He exchanged the remaining half of the bowl of soup with the elder of the Spiritual Fire Division and said with a smile, "I'm not drinking anymore. You can have the rest." It seemed that everyone had not eaten for a long time. From the beginning of the battle last night until now, there was no time to eat at all. The old man of the Spiritual Fire Department's throat twitched when he smelled the soup. He must be hungry. Lin Muyu glanced at Qianfeng and said, "Tell the Spiritual Fire Department to cook. Everyone has a bowl of hot soup. Drink while fighting." Qianfeng was pleased. "Yes, sir." The flag bearer passed the order, and the Spiritual Fire Department of each ship began to get busy. In the blink of an eye, the sky was already bright. In the distance, Qin Yin, Feng Jixing, and Xiang Yu's battleships had begun to outflank Filet's Second Legion. The heavy cannons were unleashed, and the outcome was set. The bombardment and fierce battle continued until noon. The last 1,000 battleships of the Shang army actually raised their white flags in unison. They had decided to surrender. Chapter 1146. Stop the attack. The strong smell of blood filled their nostrils as they raised their arms and roared. The flag-bearer of Qianfeng's flagship quickly passed down the order, and the sound of cannons became less and less frequent. "What's wrong, Marshal?" Qianfeng narrowed his eyes and said, "Didn't we decide not to keep any captives?" "That was then and this is now." Lin Muyu said, "The overall situation is uncertain, and keeping captives is a burden. But now that the overall situation has been set, bring these captives back to the celestial pole continent, give them 3 months' worth of rations and military expenses, and then give them grain seeds and let them go home to farm. This way, they can spread the wisdom of the Qin Empire to the entire celestial pole continent. What a good deal." But Qianfeng was somewhat hesitant and said, "In the naval battle of Changyuan Island, we almost annihilated nearly 500,000 Shang army soldiers. Our reputation for killing has already spread. Isn't it futile to accept them now? Don't worry, the Shang army near Changyuan Island has already been wiped out. No one knows that we slaughtered 500,000 people." A hint of killing intent flashed in Lin Muyu's eyes as she said, "After entering Shiping City, immediately put up a notice to pacify the people. Tell the world that the Shang army captives near Changyuan Island have been left on Changyuan Island because of the shortage of warships. They will be sent by fishing boats to the Shattered Tripod Realm to serve as farm laborers." Qianfeng smiled slightly and said, "Marshal is wise. To attack the world, attack the heart. Marshal is indeed an expert." Lin Muyu couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Marshal, why tease me? Do you think I, Lin Muyu, want to be such a scheming person who stirs up the storm? But if I don't do it, won't someone else have to suffer?" Qianfeng knew that she was talking about Qin Yin. He smiled and cupped his fists, saying, "Qianfeng swears loyalty to Marshal and Her Highness Yin in this life. Even if I die in battle, I will never regret it." "Thank you." Lin Muyu patted his shoulder lightly and said, "But now is not the time for you to climb a mountain of swords and dive into a sea of flames. Now is the time for you to make contributions. Take the captives and the warships." A speedboat sped away, slowly docking at the edge of the Shang army's flagship. Lin Muyu and Qianfeng leaped onto the flagship. Both of them were wearing the armor of the Qin Empire, and their military insignias were flashing, making them easy to recognize. The commander of the fleet, Shi Yuqiu, had also seen some generals of the Qin Empire before. The one with 2 golden stars was captaincy, and the one with 3 stars was the commander. Shi Yuqiu had seen 2 stars, but he had never seen a higher one. This time, 2 people came, one with 3 stars and the other with 5 stars. One could imagine their status in the army. "Surrendering, General." Shi Yuqiu greets the 2 sirs. Shi Yuqiu knelt down, and the commanders, deputy commanders, captaincy, and Kiliarchs behind him also knelt down. Lin Muyu raised her hand and said, "Commander Shi, please rise. I am Great Qin's Lin Muyu. I represent the Qin Empire to accept your surrender. Now, please put down your weapons. Shi Yuqiu put down his sword and put it on the deck in front of Lin Muyu's feet. With a bit of doubt on his face, he asked, "How does the marshal plan to deal with us?" "Don't worry. Since I have accepted you as captives, I won't kill you. After you go ashore, disband your army. I will give you food, travel expenses, and grain seeds. You can go back to your hometown to reunite with your families." "Really? Thank you, Marshal. Thank you, Marshal." Shi Yuqiu kowtowed again and again. Lin Muyu nodded and didn't say anything more. She just ordered the sergeants to raise the purple flag of the Qin Empire on the flagship. The fierce battle on the East Sea finally ended after nearly a day and a night. In the end, the Qin Empire won completely. The warships carrying the captives sailed eastward with the wind and arrived at the shipping port before dark. At this time, the flag of the Qin Empire was flying over the shipping port. The town of Tang had lived up to expectations and had taken the city. One by one, the warships docked at the port. At the same time, the magic crystal cannons, shells, and warhorses were transferred to the shore. In the evening, a celebratory dinner was held in the residence of the shipping port. However, it wasn't really a celebration. It was more like reorganizing the three armies. Everyone looked gloomy and didn't feel the joy of a wild victory. The Empress Qin Yin sat at the head of the table, while Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi sat on both sides. Feng Jixing, Qian Feng, and the others sat next to them. Everyone was waiting for the staff officer to finish the statistics. Zhang Wei tore off a chicken leg and ate it as a sign of respect. On the other hand, Wei Chou smiled faintly. He rested his chin on his hand and seemed to be in a daze. The lights in the residence were a little dim. Xiang Yu, Chen Xiaoli, Qin Yong, Beili Tsong, and the other generals looked at Qin Yin and Lin Muyu with burning eyes. The atmosphere of this celebratory dinner was a little too heavy. Not long after, Guanxing walked into the hall with a list in his hand and said respectfully, "Your Highness, the statistics are out." "Read it," Qin Yin said. "Yes." Guanxing looked at the list and said, "In this battle, our army lost a total of 1,844 warships, more than 84,700 soldiers, 52,100 missing, and about 70,000 injured. More than 80% of the magic crystal cannons were used up, and more than 100,000 warhorses were lost. In addition, nearly half of our rations and equipment were lost. After distributing the Jinin coins to the captives, we were left with less than 30%. The combat strength of the entire army was greatly depleted. All the generals were stunned. Only now did they know why Qin Yin and Lin Muyu didn't have any smiles on their faces. Although the fierce battle at the East Sea was considered a great victory, the losses were far beyond anyone's imagination. More than 50,000 people are missing, which means that 130,000 people died in battle. Lin Muyu's eyes were somewhat dull as she said, "In addition to the 70,000 injured, only half of our 450,000 soldiers can fight in the battle at the East Sea." Wei Chou cupped his fists and said, "Marshal, the most important thing is that our rations have been exhausted. There is no food in this shipping port. When the enemy retreated, they burned the granary. We don't even know where the rations for tomorrow's noon are. After all, we still have 300,000 soldiers, and the daily rations are an extremely terrifying number. General Ding Shi, as the commander of the supply department, what do you have to say?" Ding Shi frowned and said, "Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. This is all I have on hand. Most of the warships are occupied by warhorses, weapons, armors, and heavy artillery. I can't do anything about it." Chu Yao said, "Also, there is a serious shortage of medicine. Half of the warships that were responsible for transporting medicine were sunk by Philae when he broke out of the encirclement. Now there are more than 70,000 wounded soldiers in need of medical treatment. Bleeding control, anti-inflammatory medicine, and other medicines are extremely insufficient." Xiang Yu said, "Lin General, shipping port is only a port. It is not a place to stay for long. We must quickly capture a large city as a foundation, otherwise, we will be trapped here." Although the Shang army was routed at sea, Their land army didn't suffer the slightest loss. Once they attack, we will be caught off guard. Lin Muyu only felt an incomparably big headache. She said, "One by one, let's talk about the rations first. How much gold coins have we brought? Quickly send people to the nearby areas to purchase food and livestock." "I'm afraid this is just a drop in the bucket." Tang Xiaoxi said, Qin Yu is such a powerful person. He has already ordered to fortify the walls and clear the fields. The civilians near Shiping Port will not have any food, unless we are like Gong Shangming and Baiming Huan, capturing and eating people. The Qin army will never eat people. Lin Muyu looked at Si Kong Yao with pleading eyes. She said, "Yao, think of a way." Si Kong Yao pursed her red lips. "You finally thought of me." I do have a way, but it depends on whether you want to use it or not." "Yes, tell me." Shiping City, such a huge city, one of the famous cities in the celestial pole continent. Right now, there are only Qin Yu's 10,000 old, weak, and sick soldiers defending it. Once we take Shiping City, will we have to worry about food? Will Qin Yu give Shiping City to us so easily? Lin Muyu was a little suspicious. She frowned and said, "If I were Qin Yu, I would burn down Shiping City and not leave it for us." "I think Qin Yu has already done that," Qinin said. Situsen raised his eyebrows and said, "If I were the marshal, I would not waste time chatting here. Instead, I would send an armored cavalry with armor-piercing bows to attack Shiping City. Shiping City is only 400 miles away from Shiping Port. We can reach Shiping City in one night and attack it before Qin Yu has time to burn down the granaries. This is the best strategy." "I think so too." Lin Muyu smiled and picked up an arrow of command. She said, "Citizen, listen to my order. I order you to immediately lead 20,000 armored cavalry from the Longdan army camp to attack Shiping City overnight with the aim of seizing the provisions. You must solve the problem of the provisions before dawn." "Damn." Citizen grinned. "Is it just because I spoke too much?" "Yes, what else do you have to say? Can I finish the soup before I leave?" "No, I can't." "Servants, fill a pot of thick soup for General Citizen and let him drink it on the way." "Yes, Marshal." Citizen did not know whether to laugh or cry. He cupped his fists and said, "I understand. Marshal, if you torture me like this, I will definitely get hemorrhoids. Even if I get hemorrhoids, I must take Shiping City. Go quickly." "Yes." Everyone laughed. Looking at the three armies, perhaps only Citizen dared to speak like this to the Marshal of the Empire without being punished. However, Citizen was indeed a famous general and a fierce general. He would definitely complete the orders given by Lin Muyu. As for the methods used, that was secondary. A few minutes later, Citizen carried a pot of thick soup and left. Lin Muyu said, "Continue, tell me how to solve the problem of the lack of medicine." "This is relatively simple." Si Kong Yao replied, "Less than 70 li from here, there is a county city called Fei County. Fei County is a city famous for its medicinal herbs. It was once the city where all the herbs in the West Mountain Province were concentrated. I can immediately dispatch 5,000 cavalry to Fei County. Before dawn, they will bring back a large amount of hemostatic and anti-inflammatory medicines." Chu Yao said happily, "If that can be done, that would be the best." At this moment, Qin Yan, who was guarding the door, walked in and said, "Big brother, it's starting to snow again." "It's snowing again," Lin Muyu frowned and said, "Let's not care about that. Order the three armies to rest and reorganize tonight. We will leave for Shiping City tomorrow morning." "Wait a moment, Commander Bailey Tsong. I have an order for you." "Marshal, please instruct me." Bailey Tsong cupped his fists. "Tomorrow morning, bring dry rations and water and leave Shiping Port with 30,000 of the Empire's navy. Return to Lingdong Province and transport the rest of our troops and supplies over as soon as possible. We have captured nearly 3,000 Shang army warships, enough to be your cargo ships." "Yes, understood." Chapter 1147. Shiping City was the economic, political, and military center of the Xishan province. At this moment, the sky above the city was covered in snow, and there were almost no lights in the city. No one knew how long the winter would last, but everyone knew that they had to conserve charcoal and other resources. Otherwise, they would not be able to survive this long winter. The sound of hooves outside the city broke the silence. When Situsun arrived outside the city with 10,000 cavalry, he only saw that the west gate of Shiping City was wide open. There was not even a curfew or any soldiers guarding the gate. What's going on? Facing the dark city gate, Situsun squinted his eyes and said, "The gate is wide open and there are no guards. It looks like there's a trap." Captain C smiled and said, "Deputy Commander, the art of war says that the real is fake and the fake is real. Qin Yu is an expert at scheming. Since the gate is wide open, could it be that there are no ambushes at all? Could it be that this is just an empty city to delay the speed of our attack? Forget it. The three armies need rations. We don't have time to waste." Situsun raised his hand and said, "The 1,000 soldiers of the 1st Battalion will be divided into 10 teams. Every team of 100 will enter the city to search for rations and the situation of the people. Report back here in 2 hours. You must be extra careful. Chen Yu may have buried some kindling or magic crystal cannons in the city. We are used to these kinds of tricks." "Yes, Deputy Commander." Amidst the hurried sound of hooves, a group of people quickly entered the city. Situ Shui pursed her red lips and said, "Brother, I'm worried. Should I lead 10 dragon knights to spy on the situation in the city from the air?" Situ Sin nodded and said, "You must be careful." With a low roar from the dragon, Situ Shui also left. Holding his sword, Situ Sin urged his horse to circle around on the snowy ground. He felt very uneasy. However, if he thought about it carefully, almost all of the magic crystal cannons and native cannons in Shiping Prefecture had been taken away by Filet's main fleet. Chen Yu must be very short of supplies. Moreover, he only had 7,000 or 8,000 old, weak, and disabled soldiers. Why would he set up an ambush in the city? However, even though Situ Sen had tried his best, he still couldn't stop the development of the situation. In less than an hour, a series of loud booms could be heard in the city. Soon after, flames rose from the sky in the distance, and even the sound of fire arrows piercing through the air could be heard. "Oh no, someone is arson." Situ Sin gnashed his teeth. "Are we going in now?" Captain C was a little angry. "Don't be rash." After all, Situ Sen was experienced in battles. He squinted his eyes and said, "Let's wait for the report from our brothers in the city. We've only sent 1,000 men in. We can't send more troops in." "Yes." As expected, in less than half an hour, a continuous stream of cavalry from the Longdan army camp rushed out of the city. Each of them was covered in dust. One of the Kiliarchs said, "Deputy Commander, they've buried a few magic crystal cannons in the city. They just detonated them. Also, there are piles of firewood every 3 to 5 households in the city. Now, these piles of firewood have been set on fire. The city is on fire and it looks like it's going out of control. Do you see the figures of their soldiers? Yes, they've already escaped from the East Gate. Damn it, Qin Yu is such a despicable person." Situ Sin trembled with hatred. He said, "This lunatic wants the millions of people in Shiping City to die with us? Where's the grain? Where's the grain stored in the city? The granary of Shiping Prefecture is on fire. The flames are soaring. We can't get close at all. God damn it." Citizen pulled out his sword and said, "Quickly enter the city to put out the fire. Send a letter to the Marshal and His Highness to inform them of the situation here. Quickly, immediately, send someone to beat the drums and gongs to encourage the people to come out and fight the fire. We can't let Shiping City, a 1,000-year-old city, burn down in the blink of an eye." In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 steel cavalry became a special force to fight the fire. However, it seemed that the number was far from enough. Qin Yu was too smart. He knew that most of the people in the city had left the city to cut wood and come back to pile up firewood. Now that the fire had burned the people's firewood, it would also burn down Shiping City. Without the people and grain in Shiping City, the hundreds of thousands of troops of the Qin Empire would not be able to establish a foothold on this continent. Until noon, the fire had still not been extinguished. Nearly half of Shiping Prefecture had been burned down. The once prosperous Shiping Prefecture had become a thing of the past. Outside the city, Lin Muyu accompanied Qin Yin and led the vanguard cavalry of the army to Shiping City. Situ Sen and Situ Shui led the steel cavalry to greet them with their faces covered in soot. Without saying anything, Situ Sen dismounted and knelt on the snowy ground. Ignoring the soot on his face, he said with red eyes, "Milord, I am incompetent. The granary has been set on fire. We didn't even manage to get a single grain of rice back. Moreover, many of the houses of the people are also on fire. I can only order the troops to stop futilely trying to put out the granary fire and have them help the people fight the fire instead." Lin Muyu dismounted and helped Situ Sen up. She said, "General Sen, you did not do anything wrong. We should help the people fight the fire. Only by winning the hearts of the people can we conquer the world." The Qin Empire came from afar to let the people of the celestial pole continent know of Her Highness's wisdom and that the Qin Empire is a civilized country governed by a constitution. Yes. Thank you, milord, for not pursuing the crime of dereliction of duty. You did not dereliction of duty. It was Qin Yu who was too cunning. Lin Muyu walked into the city. A group of ashen-faced soldiers from the Longdan army camp knelt on the snow on both sides of the road and said loudly, "Greetings, Lin General." "Get up." Lin Muyu's heart was cold. He looked up at the sky. Fine snow was still falling, mixed with some grayish-white smoke. He stretched out his hand and caught a piece of dust. The dust rolled out of his palm. Lin Muyu felt a slight pain in his chest. This was the dust after the rice was burned. Chen Yu was indeed ruthless. He wanted to end the food supply of Shiping City. "What is the specific situation of the food supply, Shui?" "Milord," Situ Shui said with red eyes, "the largest granary in Shiping Prefecture has been burned. It is said that Qin Yu has been collecting food in the city for the past few days. It seems that he has also burned it. Now, in Shiping City, millions of grains have been burned. Not only is there no food in the treasury, but even the people's homes have no food. There is only enough for them to eat. It is definitely not enough to support our army of hundreds of thousands. The three armies rely on military provisions. Without food, there will be a mutiny." Lin Muyu took a deep look at Situ Shui and said, "We must find a way to get food as soon as possible. Otherwise, the army will starve from today onwards." Situ Shui said, "Milord, I have found a useful piece of information. Although Qin Yu has left with his defeated soldiers, he did not take everyone with him. Before Qin Yu left, some of Filet's subordinates had relatively luxurious mansions in Shiping City. In addition to many servants and concubines, these mansions also have a lot of food and fodder. We can slaughter pigs for the new year. First, take some people to raid these people's homes and get some food to solve the urgent problem." "Good idea." Lin Muyu's eyes lit up and said, "Situ Sen, Situ Shui, do it immediately." The two of them led the cavalry without stopping. Lin Muyu turned around, held the reins of Qin Yin's warhorse and said, "Let's go. We will accompany Her Highness to Shiping Prefecture." Shiping Prefecture was the center of Shiping City. It was also the place where Qin Yin would be overseeing for a long time in the future. With the Empress here, the morale of the three armies would be boosted. When the group of civil and military officials entered Shiping Prefecture, they were somewhat astonished. They had long heard of the affluence of the celestial pole continent, but no one had expected that a mere Shiping Prefecture would be as luxurious as Zetian Palace Hall. In fact, it might even be more luxurious. One could well imagine how luxurious Tianji Palace Hall was. It was simply unimaginable. In front of Shiping City, the 12 dragon-shaped totem pillars of the Tianji Empire towered into the sky. Although they were a little charred, it didn't affect their imposing manner. Behind the pillars was the main gate of the mansion. 8 people entered and 8 exited. At this moment, the guards had already been replaced by Imperial Guards and Imperial Guards. Everyone entered through the main gate. From afar, the main gate was actually 1,000 meters away from the mansion. Along the way, there were paths paved with glazed crystals, and both sides of the path were heavily guarded. Shiping Prefecture must have been extremely prosperous in the past. With such a superficial appearance, it's no wonder that the Tianji Empire was defeated. Feng Jixing laughed. However, Lin Muyu didn't think so. She said, the biggest reason for the Tianji Empire's defeat wasn't extravagance, but the disunity between the emperor and his subjects. If Bai Mingyuan didn't suspect Gong Shangming, Filei, and Qin Yu, and didn't fight among themselves, this wouldn't have happened. That's true. Feng Jixing raised his head and looked at the fire at the back of the main hall. He said, that should be the place where the granary was burned. Lin Muyu frowned and said, Qin Xiaoli, Tang Zhen, and Xiang Yu, the three commanders, immediately gather manpower to fetch water to extinguish the fire. Minimize the damage to Shiping City from the fire to the greatest extent. Yes, Lin General. The three commanders turned and left. Lin Muyu continued, Wei Chou, go and put up a notice to appease the people. Put up the empire's constitution and inform the people of Shiping City that from now on, Xishan Province is the territory of the Qin Empire. Everything will be governed according to the empire's constitution. Order the three armies to not offend the local people. Otherwise, they will be punished by military law. Yes, my lord. Wei Chou brought a group of staff officers and went straight to the side hall. For the time being, that would be their office. Lin Muyu looked at Chu Yao behind her and said with a smile, Sister Chu Yao, temporarily set up the spiritual medicine department in Shiping Prefecture. That way we can take care of each other. I'll listen to you. When it was close to dusk, rows of carriages carrying provisions entered Shiping Prefecture. It was Situ Sen and Situ Shui who had returned. Their faces were full of excitement. How much provisions did you get from raiding the houses, generals? Feng Jixing asked with a smile. 50,000. We got at least 50,000 dawn of provisions. Situ laughed and said, these bastards really hid a lot of provisions. Chapter 1148. 50,000 dawn. Lin Muyu was silent. Situ Shui was stunned. Do you think it's too little? I thought we could get at least 100,000 dawn. Lin Muyu frowned and said, we need to provide rations for 300,000 soldiers. That means we need to consume 30 to 40,000 dawn worth of rations a day. The 50,000 dawn you got is only enough for one day. It's far from enough, yes. Feng Jixing nodded. It's a pity that the millions of dawn of provisions in Shiping Prefecture have been burned. Otherwise, it would have been enough for our army to stay here for a month. Ding Shi cupped his fists. I will take out the gold coins from Shiping Prefecture's treasury to collect and buy food from the people. I hope it will be enough. It's too difficult. Feng Jixing said, the Tianji Empire has been fighting for a long time. The food has been almost consumed. Situ Shui said, my lord, I heard that there is a grassland about 20 miles south of Shiping City. There are several large ranches there, which used to be the property of several aristocrats. Later, they were taken over by the Yangshang dynasty and became the property of the state. Why don't we send people to the ranches overnight and drive the cattle and sheep over to serve as food for the army? That's a good idea. Do it immediately. Yes. As soon as Situ Shui left, the group of people sat in the hall with sad expressions on their faces and just sipped on their tea. What should we do now? Lin Muyu looked at Ding Shi and said, Marshal Ding, you are the commander of the supplies department. Say something? I don't care. You have to get food for me. Ding Shi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm new here. Do you think I have everything? Besides, should you, the commander of the three armies, say something like, I don't care? After saying that, Ding Shi pondered and said, if it doesn't work, we can only send the army to capture the surrounding prefectures as soon as possible to collect food. Xishan Province has been managed by Si Kongyao for many years. It is a relatively rich province. The granaries of various prefectures are still full. Chen Yu has burned Shiping City, but he doesn't have the energy to burn more prefectures. Attacking prefectures requires food. This is a big problem in itself. Wei Chou hit the nail on the head. Ding, she squinted and smiled. There is another way. Bring enough money and buy food from the villages and towns. That won't work. This is in conflict with our constitution. What will the people think of the Empress? Lin Muyu shook her head. This method is unpopular and must not be implemented. Ding, she spread his hands. This won't do, that won't do. I'm not going to be the commander of the supplies department anymore. Lin Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't. You are making things difficult for us if you shirk your responsibilities. Ding, she grinned and said, how about this? Si Kongyao and Lu Bai are more familiar with Xishan province than we are. However, they have brought people to get medicine. We will discuss this when they arrive at Shiping City. That's the only way. At this moment, Chu Yao came from the back of the palace and said, the spiritual fire department has prepared dinner. Everyone can eat. Those who want to eat, come over. Okay. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing stood up together, picked up the helmets on the table and followed Chu Yao to eat. Wei Chou, Zhang Wei, Luo Yu, Guan Xing, and the others looked at each other and immediately followed. They fought to be the first in battle. It should be the same when eating. The entire back of the palace was brightly lit. 8 large tables were set up, and most of the captaincy and commander-level warriors were eating here. Moreover, the dinner was very simple. There was no chef, and it was all cooked in a big pot made by the spiritual fire department. However, everyone's physical strength was exhausted, and they ate with relish. No one spoke and just lowered their heads to eat. Halfway through the meal, Si Kong Yao and Lu Bai returned. Yao, sit down and eat with us. Lin Muyu ordered someone to add a stool to the side. After Si Kong Yao sat down, she said gloomily, that bastard Chen Yu actually set fire to my Shiping prefecture. I am so angry. I have managed Shiping prefecture for so long and renovated it so many times. I planned to have a palace-like residence for Brother Yu and the Empress when they came down, but now it has been burnt black. I am so angry. She didn't seem to want to eat and kept stomping her feet. Lin Muyu said, Yao, let's not talk about these useless things. The most important thing now is rations. Chen Yu set fire to the granary in the treasury. Now we are out of rations and only have 1 day's worth of rations left. Otherwise, we will have to kill the horses to appease our hunger. Do you have any ideas? For example, are there any cities or prefectures nearby that have a lot of rations and are easy to conquer? The matter of rations, Si Kong Yao actually smiled. Her smile was extremely sweet. She said, Brother Yu, you have to praise me on this matter. Oh, but Lin Muyu was stunned. Even Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, and Qin Yan were very surprised. No one knew what this princess of Shiping was up to. Si Kong Yao smiled and said, a year ago, I ordered the construction of an imperial garden on the right side of Shiping City that covers an area of half the size of Shiping Prefecture. There are all kinds of rare flowers and fruits planted in it. It can be said to be evergreen all year round and very beautiful. Although there are no artificial mountains, it can still be considered a paradise. What's there to praise? Should I praise you for your extravagance? Lin Muyu was speechless. But Si Kong Yao tilted her head and smiled. There is a huge cellar under this imperial garden. For more than a year, I have secretly purchased rations from Xishan Province and Huiyuan Province and stored them in there. My guards are responsible for transporting and storing them. No one knows that there is a cellar under this imperial garden and there are a total of 1.2 million dawn of rations in there. What? Lin Muyu was so shocked that she stood up. Just now, I went to the imperial garden to take a look as soon as I entered the prefecture. Sure enough, that idiot Chen Yu only burned down the imperial garden. He didn't realize that the entrance to the cellar was under the only newly built pavilion in the imperial garden. How is it? Quickly praise me. She pouted her small mouth and looked very cute. She made Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, and the others stare at her in a daze. Lin Muyu was ecstatic. She couldn't help but hug Si Kong Yao and said happily, Yao, you are the savior of the 3 armies. I thank you on behalf of the Qin Empire. Being hugged, Si Kongyao's face was full of a happy smile. But when she saw her two sisters-in-law, Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi, looking at her like this, she immediately felt a little guilty. She stuck out her tongue to express her apology. After a few seconds, Lin Muyu let go of Si Kongyao and said, Wei Chou, immediately take some people to move the provisions in the cellar. Yes, Your Excellency. Wei Chou put the steamed bun in his mouth, picked up the helmet and left. Ding, she clapped his hands and said with a smile, Thank you, Commandery Princess of Shiping. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid that I would have been dismissed as the commander of the supply department. Lin General, can I breathe a sigh of relief now? No, you still have to continue gathering rations. 1,200,000 dong is only enough for a month. Don't forget, we will have another 500,000 soldiers coming from Lingdong province soon. We need to prepare rations before they come. Then how should I collect? I don't care. If I do, I will be the commander of the supply department. Ah, Ding, she grinned and said to the general beside him, Sangung, immediately assemble our provisions transport team after dinner. We will go to the surrounding villages and towns to scrape a layer of oil first. Ding, she nodded and said, Yes, Commander. Si Kongyao pursed her lips and smiled. It's not difficult if you want more provisions. Within 100 miles from Shiping City, Jiaoyuan Commandery, Shangchong Commandery, Shizhong Commandery, Jingyuan Chamber of Commerce, and Tianyuan Shang League will all have provisions. Moreover, the garrison of these three commanderies is less than 1,000 people. With my token, we can trick them into opening the city gates. As for Jingyuan Chamber of Commerce and Tianyuan Shang League, they are old friends with our Baizhe mercenary group. As long as we have the money, the provisions will flow continuously to Shiping Prefecture through various channels. That's great. Feng Jixing said with a smile, Your sister is too powerful. I have a feeling. What feeling? Lin Muyu asked. Obtaining Si Kongyao is equivalent to obtaining half of the Tianji Empire. Actually, I have the same feeling. Si Kongyao blushed and said, Brother, you left the Baizhe mercenary group to me and asked me to do things. I must not let him down. I must complete the task well. Otherwise, I will not be the Tianji sect's Si Kongyao in vain. Lin Muyu suddenly thought of something and asked, Yao, how is the Tianji sect now? Sai, not good. Si Kongyao was a little sad and said, Ever since grandfather ascended to the realm beyond Avalon, the Tianji sect's main altar was destroyed by Yangshang's men. Many of the Tianji sect's members wandered the martial world. I don't know how many people still support the Tianji sect. Why don't you rebuild the Tianji sect's main altar in Shiping City? Lin Muyu thought for a while and said, From now on, you will be the Tianji sect's new leader. Announce to the world that you will invite the Tianji sect's members to Shiping City to serve the Tianji sect and the Qin Empire. This way, not only can you win over the hearts of the people, but you can also win over a group of skilled soldiers for the Qin Empire. What do you think? Si Kongyao pouted and said, You're thinking about the Tianji sect again. Brother Yu, do you want Yao's life to play with you in this world war? We have been together for a long time, Lin Muyu said with a smile. Qinin said, Yao, don't worry. The Qin Empire will never forget your meritorious deeds. Moreover, you started this war only to protect himself and to pacify the war. Once the war is over, the entire celestial pole continent will be handed over to you to govern. You should be relieved now, right? I hate governing the country. I want to travel with Brother Yu and my two sisters-in-law. Si Kongyao blinked her eyes. Oh, there's a new member in the team, Feng Jixing said with a smile. Si Kongyao was stunned. What do you mean, General Feng? Feng Jixing said, because you has already promised that once the war is over and order is restored, he will bring his two wives, me, the big brother, Chu Yao, and Shi Yan to travel the world together and not care about the affairs of the world. Now that you are added, doesn't it mean that there's a new member in the team? Si Kongyao couldn't help but smile sweetly. So, we are a big family? Yes. At the side, Ding, she smiled and said, Your family really plays an important role in the entire universe. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.